Chapter 390. 20 swordsmen quickly approached and appeared in front of Chu-Mu. Each of them was either grinning maliciously or brimming with killing intent. Their sharp aura was threatening as they rushed towards Chu-Mu, stirring up sand and dust. Chu-Mu's eyes flashed with understanding. More than half of these 20 swordsmen were the ones he had met before. They were the Wild Lion Gang members who had surrounded him in the demon-shaking city and were about to kill him, but were interrupted by Han Yi. This is indeed a good place to be buried. Chu-Mu smiled faintly as he stood up in a neither fast nor slow manner. His figure was as straight as a sword. It seemed like he had no intention of finding trouble with them, but the Wild Lion Gang had no intention of letting him go. Among the 20 swordsmen of the Wild Lion Gang, the strongest was the Qi transforming Deshang, while the weakest was at the Qi transforming realm. It seemed like the Wild Lion Gang had underestimated Chu-Mu's strength and overestimated their own. They thought that they would be able to deal with Chu-Mu with just these 20 weaklings. I will chop off your head and send it to the Iron Sword Gang as a gift to Han Yi. I wonder what kind of expression he will have when he sees your head. I am really looking forward to it. The leader of the Wild Lion Gang grinned maliciously, as if victory was already in his hands. Chu-Mu would not be able to escape even if he grew wings. Kill! With a single command, 20 clanging sounds of swords being unsheathed rang out. 20 sword light flashed, and 20 different colored sword Qi shot towards Chu-Mu, bringing with it a sharp whistling sound as if they wanted to tear Chu-Mu into pieces. At the same time, after the 20 swordsmen of the Wild Lion Gang had sent out their sword Qi, their bodies swayed as they shuttled back and forth. It seemed like they were using some kind of joint attack. Killing intent filled the air, chilling sword Qi and sword light flashed, stabbing, slicing, chopping, and slashing at Chu-Mu from all directions. His front, back, left, right, up, and even his feet became the target of the attack. Traces of dense killing intent permeated the air, causing people to tremble in fear. The 20 swordsmen of the Wild Lion Gang showed a tacit understanding of each other. They knew when to advance and when to retreat. Under their joint attack, they were able to maximize the power of their attacks, even exceeding their usual power. This made Chu-Mu slightly surprised. If an ordinary Qi transformation realm swordsman were to suddenly face such an attack, he would be injured even if he didn't die. Chu-Mu thought to himself. Perfect vision sword allowed him to clearly see the attack trajectories of the 20 swordsmen from the Wild Lion Gang. It was precisely because he could see them so clearly that he was even more surprised. These 20 swordsmen's footsteps and the trajectories of their swords did not come directly at him. Instead, they covered each other and relied on each other to form a supporting force. They were able to instantly launch powerful attacks that could deal great damage, and they could also instantly switch to defense. While defending, they would also be able to launch attacks. This move clearly showed the extraordinariness of these swordsmen who had been living in the demon chaos plains for many years. Perhaps it would be difficult for them to survive here by themselves. But once they joined hands and cooperated with each other, they would be able to unleash even more power and achieve miraculous results. That's right, this was the joint attack method the Wild Lion Gang used to deal with low-grade, high-grade, and even supra-rank demonic beasts. Every single member of the Wild Lion Gang had to master this method before they were qualified to enter the demon chaos plains to hunt. Under such a sudden attack, low-grade and high-grade demonic beasts would often die on the spot, and low-grade supra-rank demonic beasts would most likely be injured as well. Their strength would be greatly reduced, and they would ultimately die under their swords. The leader of the swordsmen from the Wild Lion Gang revealed a smile. In his opinion, not only would Chu-Mu not be able to escape even if he had wings, he would even die under their attacks. Unfortunately, he had underestimated Chu-Mu too much. Chu-Mu raised his eyebrows slightly, and a bright light shot out from the bottom of his eyes. His right hand gripped the hilt of his sword. Without any reason, the swordsmen from the Wild Lion Gang felt their hearts skip a beat. Their instincts, which had been cultivated from countless life and death battles, suddenly made their hair stand on end. They didn't even have the time to find out where that feeling came from. A bright sword light flashed in front of their eyes, like a cold star shooting through the sky. All of a sudden, 20 cold stars appeared around Chu Mu's body and shot out like a meteor chasing after the moon. Almost at the same time, the 20 swords that were flying towards Chu Mu all stopped moving. It was because their masters had stopped moving. Their bodies seemed to have frozen, and all of them maintained their sword-attacking posture. Their faces were filled with confusion and disbelief. Flowers of blood bloomed on their throats, and streams of blood flowed down from the flowers of blood. Their lips moved slightly, and they stared at Chu Mu with eyes filled with confusion and fear. They slowly raised their left hand as if they were trying to cover their throats. Halfway through, they lost all their strength, and their whole bodies slowly fell backwards or to one side. The swordsmen from the Wild Lion Gang had no idea that their target, who they thought they had to kill, was actually a terrifying person who could kill a beginning Chi high stage sword artist and fight against a low Chi high stage sword artist. Their combined attack, which was able to injure a low-level super-rank demonic beast, was far from enough to deal with Chu Mu. Unless all 20 of them had sword chi at the peak of the chi transformation stage, they would not be able to threaten Chu Mu. Yi Qin searched the 20 swordsmen's bodies with ease. In the end, he only found a few dozen low-rank soul stones, and the rest were the 20 mid-rank swords that they used. What a fast speed of drawing and retracting your sword. Even I am surprised. A mocking voice suddenly sounded out. Chu Mu was shocked. He quickly turned around to look at the source of the voice, and his pupils shrank. He saw a figure wearing a gray robe standing under a tree 30 meters away. It was as if he had merged with the tree, and Chu Mu didn't notice him at all. A chill rose from the bottom of his feet to his spine. Chu Mu couldn't help but shiver. His pores opened up and he was trembling. He was able to let someone come within 30 meters of him without him noticing. If this person attacked him, he would most likely be injured, or even 30 meters for a strong swordsman was not much different from 3 meters. The gray figure 30 meters away was a man who looked like he was in his 30s or his 20s. His bald head was like that of a monk, and there was a red mole in between his eyebrows. His long and narrow eyes made his entire face look weird. In other words, he looked a bit abstract, because the person's chi seemed to have merged with the trees and the surroundings. Chu Mu couldn't see his sword chi level. He could only tell that he was a chi high stage sword artist, and not just any chi high stage sword artist. He quickly adjusted his breathing, and the sky origin sword chi slowly moved through his meridians. He was also ready to use the sky traversing secret technique. Although this person didn't reveal any chi, Chu Mu's instinct told him that he was definitely not a match for him. Since he wasn't a match for him, there was no need to fight to the death. It would be best if he could escape. Peak of the chi transformation stage, sword chi level. You only need one more chance to break through to the chi high stage. The bald man in the gray robe said calmly, which made Chu Mu's pupils contract. Don't worry, the current you does make my blood boil, but it is only a little. If you want me to use my sword, you are far from enough. The bald man in the gray robe seemed to have seen through Chu Mu's current state. He said slowly, but his tone was very strange. It was as if there was admiration, expectation, and disdain. Hurry up and break through to the chi high stage. I will only give you half a year. After half a year, no matter if you break through to the chi high stage or not, I will come and find you again. When that time comes, if you are not strong enough, you will die. You are Void Butcher. Chu Mu was slightly startled when he heard this. He then said with an uncertain tone, That's right, I am Void Butcher. Ha ha. The bald man in the gray robe suddenly laughed and admitted his identity. At the same time, the feeling of being one with the surrounding environment disappeared. A terrifying aura, like an ancient beast awakening, rushed out in all directions like a tsunami. The surrounding trees were hit by the terrifying aura and started to sway crazily, making creaking sounds. The leaves were broken into pieces, and the sand and pebbles were thrown into the air. Chu Mu, who was 30 meters away, contracted his pupils again. He felt that Void Butcher had suddenly become a terrifying beast that had awakened and was roaring towards the sky. It was as if his roar was going to tear the sky apart. This kind of aura would make a normal Chi transformation stage, sword warriors, legs go soft. The terrifying aura was like a tidal wave, rushing out and filling the sky with dust. Void Butcher looked deeply at Chu Mu, his eyes shining. Work hard. Then he quickly turned into a streak of light and disappeared in the blink of an eye. When the dust settled, the tree had tilted to one side from the terrifying aura. More than half of the leaves on it were gone, making it look very miserable. Chu Mu looked in the direction that the bald man in gray robes had left and was speechless for a long time. He never thought that he would be targeted by Void Butcher and become his target. Just as Void Butcher had said, he would come looking for him in half a year. If he was not his opponent by then, he would die by his sword. Unless he left the demon-shaking plains and the demon-shaking city within half a year, it would be unavoidable. Half a year. Chu Mu withdrew his gaze and looked at the sky. A faint smile appeared on his face, and he said slowly in a voice that only he could hear, "Vicious Sword Void Butcher, I'm afraid you found the wrong person. In half a year, the person who will die might not be me." No matter what Void Butcher's intentions were when he said that he would fight Chu Mu in half a year, at the end of the day, if Chu Mu was not his opponent, then he would die by his sword. Chu Mu would not let go of anyone who wanted to kill him. Reaping their lives was only a matter of time. If Void Butcher chose to attack him at this time, then Chu Mu would most likely have to run. As for whether he could escape, that was another matter altogether. However, all in all, the chances of killing Chu Mu right now were higher. If he waited for half a year, Chu Mu was very sure that his strength would have improved significantly within this half a year. He would have become much more powerful. At that time, it would be hard to say whether it would be Void Butcher who killed him or him who killed Void Butcher. Chu Mu put the 20 swords of the 20 swordsmen into his spatial bracelet. If there were only 2 or 3 swords, then he wouldn't be interested, but 20 of them could be sold for tens of thousands of low-grade spiritual stones. To be continued. If you like this work, then you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 391. Sky Slaughterer. No one knew what his original name was. When he became famous, he used the name Sky Slaughterer. Perhaps this was his real name. From Han Yi, Chu Mu learned a lot of information about the Monster Shaker City. One of them was about the Sky Slaughterer, a bald head, long and narrow eyes, a gray robe, and a red mole between his eyebrows. These were the symbols of Sky Slaughterer. Therefore, when Chu Mu saw his appearance clearly, he remembered the information that Han Yi had told him. Other than the many forces in the Monster Shaker City, there were also some small groups and some lone wolves. The most famous lone wolves all had their own titles. For example, the Sky Slaughterer. Other than the Sky Slaughterer, there was also the Broken Sword Setting Sun, the Blood Sword Burning Sword, and the Demon Sword Ghost Mist. According to Han Yi, these 4 people all had the sword Chi of the Chi High Realm. Although it was not clear what level they were at, they could easily kill a normal Chi High Realm sword artist. These 4 people all had their own style of doing things. For example, Sky Slaughterer liked to fight with talented sword artists. No matter who it was, as long as they were targeted by him, they could not avoid a fight. Once Sky Slaughterer attacked, he would not leave anyone alive. Seeing that he was still alive, it was clear that those who were targeted by him had all died under his sword. Rumor had it that all 4 of them had comprehended the perfect sword form. If it were not for their age, they would all have the qualifications to challenge for the Sword Master title. From this point of view, the Sky Slaughterer, Broken Sword Setting Sun, Blood Sword Burning Sword, and the Demon Sword Ghost Mist could all be at the Sword Master level. Of course, it was also possible that they were only close to the Sword Master level. There seemed to be a fine line between close to the Sword Master level and reaching the Sword Master level, but in reality, there was an obvious difference in strength. In other words, Chu Mu had to greatly increase his strength in half a year and reach a level that was close to or even comparable to a Sword Master. Otherwise, if he wanted to fight with Sky Slaughterer, it would not be ideal. To increase his strength to the level of a Sword Master in half a year was definitely a huge challenge for Chu Mu. Even he was not sure if he could do it. However, if there was no goal in life, wouldn't it be too boring to live? Thinking up to this point, Chu Mu's chest was filled with pride. Not only did he not feel fear or confusion, but he also felt a strong urge to move forward. Suddenly, Chu Mu felt that the bottleneck between the Qi forming stage and the Qi high stage was loosening. Within 3 months, I will definitely be able to reach the 9th transformation of the 9 transformations of Sky Yuan. By then, I should be able to break through to the Qi high realm and increase my power. Maybe at that time, I will be able to take advantage of the opportunity to connect with the heaven and earth to break through the bottleneck of Desheng's peak sword form and reach the completion stage. Chu Mu thought to himself, if these 3 could be achieved within half a year, Chu Mu's strength would definitely be greatly improved. Chu Mu was confident. Chu Mu did not rest under the immense pressure of the Void Butcher Sword. He immediately ventured deep into the demonic chaos planes in search of even stronger demonic beasts to test his sword. Within the demonic shaking city within the Wild Lion Gang, the furious Li Kuangshi's face was gloomy. His anger was written all over his face. His murderous aura was like a surging tide. It was so oppressive that no one dared to look directly at Li Kuangshi. Send out a team of Golden Lion Sword Guards and kill him without mercy. After a while, Li Kuangshi slowly said in a deep voice. His voice was filled with an unquestionable dominance. The dense, murderous aura made people tremble in fear. Chief, you can't do that. The Golden Lion Sword Guards are the core of our gang. One of the elders braced himself and voiced out a different opinion. He was sincerely thinking for the Wild Lion Gang. Killing 23 of our brothers, this person's strength should be comparable to the peak of the Qi forming stage. Only the Golden Lion Sword Guards can guarantee that we can kill him. Li Kuangshi's eyes emitted an intense light that fell on the elder's body. Immediately, the elder's body trembled. He quickly retracted the light and said unhurriedly. Hearing Li Kuangshi's words, the elder did not continue to object. He was very familiar with Li Kuangshi's character. Before making a decision, Li Kuangshi was very easygoing. However, after making a decision, he was not allowed to raise any objections. If this elder was not sincerely thinking for the Wild Lion Gang, he would have been punished this time. After Li Kuangshi gave the order, not long after, 10 swordsmen wearing black plates with a golden lion embroidered on their sleeves left the Wild Lion Gang and quickly left the demonic shaking city. Chief, a team of Golden Lion Sword Guards from the Wild Lion Gang has left the city. The various factions in the demonic shaking city were all against each other. Therefore, there were specialized people who paid attention to each other's movements. When the Golden Lion Sword Guards of the Wild Lion Gang moved out, it immediately attracted the attention of the other factions. However, they did not know why the Golden Lion Sword Guards of the Wild Lion Gang had moved out. The Golden Lion Sword Guards were the core of the Wild Lion Gang. Each and every one of them had sword Qi cultivation at the great circle of Qi transformation realm. Brother Chu, I can't help you this time. Han Yi stood in the backyard of the Iron Sword Gang and looked at the sky with his hands behind his back. He thought for a moment and knew that the Golden Lion Sword Guards movement was related to Chu Mu. The Wild Lion Gang had the Golden Lion Sword Guards, and the Iron Sword Gang had the Iron Slayer Sword Guards. The two sides were equally matched. If they wanted to fight against the Golden Lion Sword Guards, they would naturally have to send the Iron Slayer Sword Guards. The Iron Slayer Sword Guards movement was not a small matter that could be casually decided. There were many implications involved. The Iron Sword Gang was different from the Wild Lion Gang. The Wild Lion Gang could be said to be under Li Guangshi's command. However, the Iron Sword Gang's major decisions had to be discussed and agreed by the majority. Although Han Yi had the right to make decisions as the gang leader, the Iron Sword Gang was built by him and his brothers. He could not ignore the opinions of his brothers. If he can survive the pursuit of the Golden Lion Sword Guards, then it will prove that my eyes were not wrong. Han Yi said to himself and turned around to walk back into the house. A sharp cry came from the sky, piercing the eardrums of those who heard it. Then a huge black shadow swooped down, its sharp claws gleaming with cold light as it viciously clawed at Chumu. This was a flying demonic beast called the Bald Eagle, because its entire body was covered in black feathers. Only the tuft of hair on the top of its head was white, hence its name. The Bald Eagle was also a low-level demonic beast. The demonic chi emitted by the Bald Eagle that attacked Chumu made it clear to Chumu that it was a low-level, transcendent, demonic beast. The Bald Eagle swooped down like lightning, but Chumu's reaction was even faster. In an instant, he unsheathed his velocities, soared, and stabbed upwards. A sharp cry sounded and blood splashed. Not only did the Bald Eagle's claws fail to catch Chumu, but Chumu's sword pierced its chest, breaking its feathers and injuring its body. If it were not for the fact that the demonic beast's body was very tough and the Bald Eagle's reaction was very fast, Chumu's sword would have been enough to kill it. The Bald Eagle was not afraid of being injured. Instead, its ferocious nature was aroused. It fiercely pecked at Chumu with its sharp beak, which was even sharper than a high-grade sword. Chumu staggered and his body swayed, dodging the Bald Eagle's attack. His velocities soared, lightly slashed. The Tianyuan sword cheese, tearing intent realm, and 1% of the sword's power were condensed in this sword. It easily cut through the Bald Eagle's wing, which was as fragile as tofu. Heavily injured, the Bald Eagle was scared. It desperately flapped its other wing, trying to escape. Unfortunately, one of its wings was cut off, and under the heavy injury, it lost its balance. It could only struggle in vain. A large amount of blood spurted out. A small dark red sword appeared in Chumu's left hand. In an instant, it shot out and sank into the Bald Eagle's body. In the blink of an eye, the Bald Eagle shrieked and struggled while shriveling. Its blood was completely absorbed by the small dark red sword. Speaking of which, if the Bald Eagle used its innate demonic skill, it might be able to fight against Chumu. However, demonic beasts generally did not use their innate demonic skills. Although their innate demonic skills were very powerful, they also consumed a lot of energy. Unless it was a desperate moment, demonic beasts generally would not use their innate demonic skills. The difference in strength between the Bald Eagle and Chumu was too big. It didn't even have the chance to use its innate demonic skill. Quickly putting away the small dark red sword and putting the Bald Eagle's demonic core into the space bracelet, Chumu glanced at the Bald Eagle's corpse on the ground. Suddenly, his sword chi shot out and shredded the corpse, making it impossible for people to recognize it. After doing all this, Chumu continued forward. The words on the small dark red sword seemed to be a little clearer. However, it was still far from being completely clear. Chumu didn't know how much more blood he needed to absorb before the secret of the small, dark, red sword would appear. Chumu's path was straight. He kept going forward, going deeper and deeper into the Chaos Demon Plane. The deeper he went into the Chaos Demon Plane, the more powerful the demonic beasts he would encounter. As long as it was within the range of his strength, the more powerful the demonic beast, the more helpful it would be for his improvement. Moreover, if the small dark red sword could absorb the blood of powerful demonic beasts, it should be able to unlock the secret even faster. Unknowingly, 2 days had passed since Chumu entered the Chaos Demon Plane. There was no accurate map of the Chaos Demon Plane, so Chumu didn't know where he was. He only knew that he was deep in the Chaos Demon Plane. The demonic beasts he encountered were basically low-level, high-level, and low-level superclass. As for the Golden Lion sword guards of the Wild Lion Gang, they were looking for Chumu everywhere. The Golden Lion sword guards were all proficient in tracking techniques. After they saw the corpses of the 20 swordsmen, they followed the traces left behind by Chumu. However, Chumu's speed was very fast. In fact, he was even faster than them. Therefore, they couldn't catch up to Chumu at all. Night fell and the stars filled the sky. Chumu was roasting the meat of a demonic beast. The flame rose and the golden oil dripped with sizzling sounds. A rich aroma of meat immediately filled the air. It smells so good. It makes me drool. A cry of surprise came from nearby. Immediately after, a figure appeared. When he saw Chumu, he hurriedly cupped his fists and bowed to Chumu. Such a fragrant roast meat. I wonder if you would be willing to share some with me? Before Chumu could reply, another figure quickly approached from the other side. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chijian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 392. Sir, your barbecue skills are truly extraordinary. It is even better than the barbecue at the Drunken Cloud restaurant. Mr. Yin, who was around 40 years old and had a kind and steady face, looked at Chumu with a smile and nodded his head in praise. Indeed, Sir's barbecue is very fragrant and delicious. A beautiful young swordswoman in her 20s also praised. The meat is well barbecued, but as a swordsman, you should focus on cultivation. Do you really want to be a chef in a restaurant with this kind of skill? A young swordsman in his 20s said indifferently. He scolded with a tone of superiority as if Chumu was his junior. Mr. Yoon is right. The taste of this barbecue is indeed better than the barbecue at the Drunken Cloud restaurant. A middle-aged swordsman in his 30s took a bite and nodded his head. These people were attracted by the aroma of the barbecue when Chumu was barbecuing. There were 5 people in total. There were 2 groups of people. One group had 1 person, and the other had 4 people. They came from different directions. Chumu was not someone who was unapproachable. Plus, there was a lot of barbecued meat. He could not finish it all himself, so he shared some with the others. He could also get some information from these people. The person called Mr. Yin was a middle-aged swordsman in his 40s. He looked very kind, mature, and steady like an uncle next door. He was the kind of person that people would have a good impression of. If it was someone with little experience, they would immediately think that he was a trustworthy person. Even if it was someone with a lot of experience, they would not have any enmity towards him unless there was a conflict of interest. In Chumu's eyes, the sword chi that Mr. Yin was emitting showed that his sword chi cultivation was at the chi transformation realm. To have such a cultivation at such a young age, it could only be said that Mr. Yin's cultivation talent was very ordinary. Of the other 4 swordsmen, the oldest was a man in his 30s. The other 3 were in their 20s. There were 2 men and 1 woman. The male swordsman in his 30s was also at the chi high realm, while the other 3 swordsmen in their 20s were at the chi transforming Deshang's sword chi level. When Chumu heard the name Mr. Yin, he knew who the other party was. Wen Han, you mentioned the famous people in Demon Shaker City, other than Savage Sword, Blood Sword, Demon Sword, and so on. He also mentioned Mr. Yin. It was rumored that Mr. Yin was a nice guy, and his reputation in Demon Shaker City and Demon Chaos Plains was extremely good. Mr. Yin would never take the initiative to oppose others. If someone needed help, regardless of their cultivation or background, once Mr. Yin knew, he would definitely do his best to help. Even if he couldn't do it himself, he would still run around everywhere. Moreover, Mr. Yin was good at resolving conflicts. Although he did not participate in the conflicts between different factions, He had used his face and ability to resolve several life and death conflicts between small factions, allowing them to reconcile and leave behind a good reputation. In a place like Demon Shaker City and Demon Chaos Plains, there were actually people who were willing to sacrifice their own interests and owe others a favor to help others. It was laughable, but it really existed. In the beginning, there were people who laughed at Mr. Yin, but as time passed, the number of people who had received help from Mr. Yin increased. Under the influence of the crowd, those who laughed at Mr. Yin were all attacked. As time passed, even if there were people who did not agree with Mr. Yin's actions, they would not say anything. But no matter what, even Han Yi admired Mr. Yin a lot and thought that he was a person worthy of respect. After Chu Mu found out that the other party was Mr. Yin, he also carefully observed him as they chatted. Combined with the way he spoke and some of his actions, he found that this person was exactly what he appeared to be. As for the other 4 people, Chu Mu only knew their surnames, which were Lu. As for their names, he did not know, and Chu Mu was not interested in knowing. How can such good roasted meat not be accompanied by wine? The middle-aged swordsman in his 30s laughed loudly. Suddenly, a large wine jar appeared in his hand. It could probably hold 2 or 3 pounds of wine. Then he took out 6 cups and opened the lid of the wine jar. A thick wine aroma immediately filled the air, and people could not help but take a deep breath. The smell was very good. The middle-aged swordsman filled the cups one by one, and even held the cup in front of Mr. Yin with both hands. With a respectful expression, he said, "Mr. Yin, please try this wine." "You are too polite." Mr. Yin hurriedly took the cup with both hands. He took a small sip, and his eyes narrowed slightly. After a few breaths, he nodded and exclaimed, "Good wine, good wine. I don't usually drink wine, and I don't know much about wine, but this wine is very smooth, soft, and mellow. Since Mr. Yin thinks it is good, why not drink a few more cups?" Chu Mu did not have this kind of treatment. He lifted the cup and smelled it. The wine was indeed rich and intoxicating. He took a small sip, and his mouth was suddenly filled with fragrance. The other 3 swordsmen in their 20s were all juniors. They all had smiles on their faces, but the 2 young swordsmen looked at Chu Mu with a bit of pride. Speaking of wine, I remember that a friend once gave me a gourd of wine. He said it was 100 years old. Unfortunately, I am not good at wine, so I have been hiding it and never tried it. Mr. Yin suddenly had an enlightened expression. He put down the cup, and as he spoke, a reddish-brown wine gourd appeared in his hand. He gently shook it, and immediately there was the sound of thick water. He also looked at Chu Mu. 100 years old wine. The eyes of the 30-something swordsman suddenly lit up, and he stared at the wine gourd in Mr. Yin's hand. He was a person who loved wine, and the wine in his hand was only 10 years old. 100 years old wine. What kind of wine was that? It was fate that brought us together today, and we were able to taste such delicious barbecued meat. I don't have anything else to show you, but this 100 years old wine was given to me by my friend. Mr. Yin chuckled, and then he took out 5 bronze cups. These cups were also given to me by my friend. I heard that he said that if you want to drink this wine, you need these special cups to fully display the wine's effects. However, I am not good at wine and have never tried it before, so I can't tell if it is real or fake. Today, I will let you all test it out. As he spoke, Mr. Yin opened the cork of the wine gourd. Immediately, an even more intoxicating wine aroma filled the air. Especially the swordsman in his 30s, he revealed an intoxicated expression, and his wine bug was stirred. We are still in the depths of the demon chaos plains, and we may encounter danger at any time. So, please have a taste of this wine. When we return to the demon-shaking city, we will find a place to drink to our heart's content, Mr. Yin said, and filled the 5 cups to the brim. He also poured a cup for himself, but he poured it into the ceramic cup from before. The 30-something swordsman impatiently picked up the bronze cup. He first sniffed it as if he was about to ascend to immortality. He then took a small sip, letting the wine swirl in his mouth. He closed his eyes and immersed himself in the taste. Speaking of which, although Chumu didn't drink too much, he would still drink a bit. Moreover, in every man's bones, there was an indescribable feeling towards wine. When he saw good wine, he couldn't help but be a bit moved. After taking a small sip, Chumu immediately felt as if his pores were about to explode, and a refreshing feeling surged through his entire body. A few moans came from the side. It was the 3 young swordsmen in their 20s who were also drinking. They were also immersed in the wine, especially the female swordsman. Her face was completely red, and her slightly opened eyes seemed to have water flowing through them. It was extremely seductive. Mr. Yin held the cup, but didn't drink. Instead, he looked at everyone's expressions. When someone woke up and looked at him, he brought the cup to his mouth and took a sip. It really is good wine. Mr. Yin let out a sigh of surprise, and he felt a sense of satisfaction. If we weren't in the demon chaos plains, I would really get drunk, the 30-something swordsman said and took another sip. The 100-year-old wine was extremely mellow and could only be drunk slowly. If one drank it all at once, they would probably start to feel dizzy. Everyone ate a few more mouthfuls of barbecued meat. After a while, Mr. Yin suddenly let out a strange laugh. "Everyone, why don't you obediently hand over all your treasures to me?" When these words came out, everyone was stunned and puzzled. "Mr. Yin, what do you mean?" the 30-something swordsman asked. Chu Mu frowned slightly. "My wine tastes good, right? You should know that I used a lot of spirit medicine to brew this wine. It costs a lot. If you drink it, you will have to pay the price." Mr. Yin threw away the wine cup in his hand. His expression was very strange, as if he was laughing at something. "All right. In order to maintain the title of Mr. Yin, I definitely can't let you leave alive." As he spoke, an incomparably sharp murderous aura surged out. This murderous aura was so strong that it proved that hundreds of people had died by his hands. When these words came out, everyone's expression changed greatly. Even Chu Mu's expression changed greatly. He didn't think that Yan Jian, who was very good at judging people, would make a mistake. This so-called Mr. Yin was actually a person who deceived others. Damn it! The 30-something swordsman angrily pulled out his sword and slashed at Mr. Yin. Mr. Yin didn't move at all. The sword stopped halfway. The 30-something swordsman's body trembled, and he suddenly lost all of his strength. He became soft, and the sword energy in his meridians froze. That wine of mine is called Qi Condensation Bone Softening Wine. It is indeed a good wine. It won't kill people. It will only cause them to temporarily lose their ability to move. After an hour, they will recover. Unfortunately, you don't have an hour. Mr. Yin looked down at the 5 people on the ground. His kind face was filled with a domineering aura. His eyes had an expression that said he was in control of everything. This was Mr. Yin's true face. "You also drank that wine. Why weren't you poisoned?" the 30-something swordsman asked weakly. His heart was filled with regret. "Didn't I say that the wine needs a special wine cup to show its effects?" Mr. Yin had a strange smile on his face. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qijian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 393. Chu Mu felt a chill in his heart. Mr. Yin, who was respectfully addressed by many as Mr. Good, was actually a thief who deceived others. If such a thing were to be spread out, perhaps no one would believe it. Mr. Yin was also very cautious in his actions. In the outside world, he was called Mr. Good Guy. Only in this kind of remote and unknown place would he show his true face. With 1 cup of wine, 5 people were knocked out. They lost the ability to move for an hour, and even their sword Qi seemed to have frozen. In this kind of situation, they could only wait to be slaughtered. Subsequently, Chu Mu discovered that this Mr. Yin was not only a person who took advantage of his reputation to steal from the world, but also a dangerous and cruel person. A sword appeared in Mr. Yun's hand. It was a high-grade sword. With a slight shake of his wrist, a sharp golden sword chi shot out from the tip of the sword towards the 30-something-year-old swordsman. With a poochie sound, the sword chi cut through the opponent's robe, but it was blocked by a piece of armor and shattered. Middle-grade armor, Mr. Yin said in a low voice and then smiled. The value of a middle-grade armor was not low. These people really did have some background. However, if they did not have some background, Mr. Yin would not have plotted against them. It had to be known that the qi condensation bone softening wine required a lot of spirit herbs to make it taste like 100-year-old wine. It also had the effect of condensing qi and bone softening. Mr. Yin would not do a business that made him lose money. Since he had a middle-grade armor, he could not damage it. The tip of his sword trembled and another sword chi shot out. Immediately, the 30-something-year-old swordsman's neck was pierced, and he died a violent death. Uncle Jen, the three young swordsmen, cried out weakly. Their eyes were red. "You shameless bastard, you'll die a horrible death." Following this, the three of them looked at Mr. Yun and cursed. However, their voices were too soft, like the buzzing of mosquitoes. "I really am a shameless bastard. It's funny that this group of idiots actually thought I was Mr. Good Guy." Mr. Yin seemed to find this matter very funny. He laughed and walked to the side of the dead swordsman. He took off the middle-grade armor from his body, took off his low-grade spatial bracelet, and put away his top-grade sword. One of the opponents was a chi-high swordsman. If they used their full strength to fight, the result would be different. Plus, it would cause too much of a commotion. Mr. Yin preferred this method of killing his enemies effortlessly. After killing the first person, Mr. Yin immediately looked at the second person. He put away his sword and other weapons, not even letting go of a low-grade spirit stone. He had an evil grin on his face as the tip of his sword trembled again. Another sharp sword chi shot out, and the second person died. Soon after, the fourth person also died under Mr. Yun's sword chi. "Wait, don't kill me." The fifth young swordsman's face was filled with fear as he begged. "If I don't kill you, do you think I'll let you ruin my reputation?" Mr. Yin said mockingly. He was very close to this person. The sword chi shot out, and in the blink of an eye, pierced through this person's neck. He couldn't be more dead. Mr. Yin flicked his sword and skillfully took out all the valuable items from the other party and put them into his spatial bracelet. This level of proficiency was enough to make even a bandit who had been robbing people all year round blush with shame. He had 100% confidence in his qi condensation bone softening wine. He had never failed before. Even though Mr. Yin was cautious, he was very relieved at this moment. Just as he was looking at Chumu, he heard a clanging sound. At the same time, a cold light shot towards his face. The speed was indescribably fast, causing Mr. Yun's brain to crash. The Tianyuan sword chi was the power of the concept of ripping. 1% of the sword force and the minor success of the vibrating stone force were all activated in an instant. Mr. Yin felt a great threat. All the hairs on his body stood up and his pores were about to explode. Without any thoughts in his mind, Mr. Yin subconsciously retreated and raised his sword to block. All of this was out of pure instinct. It was an instinct that he had developed through many battles as a swordsman. He was too hasty. With a ding sound, the sword in his hand was shaken by force and almost flew out of his hand. The cold light appeared in front of him again and went straight for his throat. Mr. Yin was almost scared out of his wits. As he retreated, he tried his best to move his head back. Suddenly, he felt a tearing pain from his neck to his chest. The sound of the sword piercing his flesh was especially ear-piercing. Scram! The intense pain caused Mr. Yin to be greatly stimulated. The sword chi in his body exploded like a flood. With a rumbling sound, it spread out in all directions. The stones on the ground were instantly shattered. Chu Mu quickly pulled back his sword and strengthened his sword chi. At the same time he retreated. Sounds of poo-chi could be heard. In an instant he had retreated 10 meters away. The sword chi around his body had been shattered. From now on, you will be hunted endlessly. Mr. Yun angrily left behind a sentence filled with hatred. He turned into a ray of light and disappeared into the distance, leaving behind a few drops of blood in the air. Chu Mu's eyes flashed with a trace of pity. He still let Mr. Yun escape. At the critical moment, it was revealed that Mr. Yun's sword chi had reached Desheng's chi high realm and not the chi transformation realm. If he used all of his strength, it was unknown whether Chu Mu could defeat him. Luckily, Mr. Yun was very confident in his chi condensation bone softening wine. Because it had never failed, he did not guard against Chu Mu at all. In the end, he was stabbed by Chu Mu. The power of that sword was extraordinary. Even Mr. Yun's protective sword chi was torn apart. Although he was wearing armor, the wound was just above the armor and below the neck. If the sword had gone in a little bit more, it would have taken Mr. Yun's life. It was quite funny. Mr. Yun had hidden his cultivation level. The strength of his protective sword chi was naturally at the chi transformation realm. If it was Desheng's protective sword chi, then the injury caused by Chu Mu's sword would have been much lighter. Even if Mr. Yun escaped, the sword had the power of the stone quake. The wound would have been enlarged, and it would take at least a few days for it to heal. Furthermore, Mr. Yun had used his sword chi to force Chu Mu back at the critical moment. His meridians would have been damaged. If he had stayed to fight with Chu Mu, even if he could have killed Chu Mu in the end, he would have been in danger. The cautious Mr. Yin would not have allowed himself to be in such a dangerous situation. No matter what, today had taught Chu Mu a lesson. Don't trust your own eyes too much. Sometimes what you see may not be the truth. Ever since he had trained in the sword vision technique and challenged people everywhere, Chu Mu's eyesight had become better than others. He had his own way of seeing people. When he saw people as swords, he could see the essence of people. He had never been wrong. Who would have thought that this time he would have been wrong about Mr. Yin? It was not that Chu Mu's eyesight was bad, but that Mr. Yin's skills were higher. Luckily, the Sky Desolate sword physique has finished refining my bones and meridians. Chu Mu said to himself. He was still a little scared. Mr. Yun's chi condensation bone, softening wine targeted the sword chi and bones. In the end, it targeted the meridians and bones. It prevented the sword chi from moving through the meridians, causing the bones to become soft and powerless. This caused the sword user to temporarily lose the ability to move and be at the mercy of others. Luckily, Chu Mu's bones and meridians had completed the Sky Desolate sword physique and naturally developed a resistance, causing the chi condensation bone softening wine to lose its effect. Not only the chi condensation bone softening wine, but other poisons would also lose their effect. Once the Sky Desolate sword physique was completed, Chu Mu's body would be invulnerable to poison. However, there was still a considerable amount of time before the Sky Desolate sword physique was completed. Mr. Yin must have trained in a secret technique to hide his cultivation level. Otherwise, he would not have thought that he was only at the chi transformation realm. Chu Mu extinguished the bonfire and quickly left. There were a few corpses there that clearly had some background. He did not want to get involved in this kind of unnecessary trouble, especially if it was the trouble of being a scapegoat for someone else. Towards a secret technique that could hide one's cultivation, Chu Mu was a bit envious. Don't look at how his sword aura cultivation was only at the initial success stage of transforming chi. Big Mr. Yin probably already saw that his sword aura cultivation was at the peak of transforming chi. However, Mr. Yin was very confident in himself. In his eyes, the only difference between the initial chi transformation realm and the chi transformation realm was one's background. Apart from the difference in talent, There was also the importance of the faction behind the person who had reached the initial Qi transformation realm and the person who had reached the Qi transformation realm before the age of 20. A person who had reached the Qi transformation realm before the age of 20 would definitely be highly valued by any faction. Even if they did not send experts to protect him, they would at least give him some life-saving treasures. These treasures were extremely attractive to Mr. Yin. This was also the reason why Mr. Yin had looked at Chu Mu many times during this period. About an hour after Chu Mu left the bonfire, figures flashed in the dark night and stopped near the bonfire. There were a total of 10 people. One of them squatted down and carefully looked around. His gaze swept past the ashes of the bonfire and fell on the bodies of the 4 swordsmen. The 4 of them did not die at the hands of the target. However, the target did stop here and left less than 2 hours ago. As soon as he finished speaking, the person stood up and suddenly turned to look in the direction Chu Mu had left. His eyes flickered with a sharp light. Less than 2 hours. Immediately move out and speed up. We must catch up to the target as soon as possible, behead him, and bring him back. These 10 people were the Golden Lion swordsmen of the Wild Lion Gang. Li Kuangshi had given them the mission of killing Chu Mu and bringing back his head. The Golden Lion swordsmen were Li Kuangshi's sharp swords. As long as they followed orders and completed the mission, they could ignore everything else. As soon as he finished speaking, the 10 Golden Lion swordsmen immediately used their movement techniques and turned into streaks of light that quickly chased after Chu Mu. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qijian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 394. The Golden Lion sword guards were still unable to catch up to Chu Mu. They had less than 2 hours to track him, but Chu Mu's speed was faster than theirs. Moreover, after entering the Demon Chaos Plains, Chu Mu did not move in a straight line. Even though the Golden Lion sword guards were good at tracking, in such a complicated terrain and under the attacks of demonic beasts, it was inevitable that they would make inaccurate judgments. A slight mistake could lead to a great error. They had actually lost their direction. If they wanted to find Chu Mu, they could only rely on luck. This was something that even Li Kuangshi himself did not expect. Unknowingly, Chu Mu had arrived at the foot of a mountain, the Demon Chaos Mountain. The Demon Chaos Mountain could be said to be very deep into the Demon Chaos Plains. If one went past the Demon Chaos Mountain, they would enter the central main sword region. However, it was said that there were demonic beasts living on the Demon Chaos Mountain. Demonic beasts were divided into low, mid, and high ranks. Low-rank demonic beasts were equivalent to human Qi transformation realm swordsmen. Mid-rank demonic beasts were equivalent to Qi Sea realm, and high-rank demonic beasts were equivalent to 9th transformation realm swordsmen. As for demonic beasts, the weakest of them was equivalent to human origin realm swordsmen. Even origin realm swordsmen would not dare to say that they could go past the Demon Chaos Mountain, let alone those below. A dark red light flashed and disappeared into the void. Immediately after, a miserable cry rang out. A raging inferno cloud, stepping beast a few dozen meters away from Chu Mu, began to frantically struggle in all directions. Its powerful body quickly shriveled up, and after about 5 breaths of time, it fell to the ground and became a corpse of skin and bones, completely dead. This was a mid-rank, low-rank demonic beast. If it was a battle, it would not be easy for Chu Mu to kill it. However, the dark red dagger was too terrifying. The dagger was picked out from the demonic beast's body, and the demonic beast's demonic core was also picked out. The dagger was only interested in blood. The demonic core was still intact. This was Chu Mu's only gain. Up until now, more than 20 demonic beasts had died to the Crimson Dagger. All of them had their blood sucked dry. The 2 ancient characters on the dagger became clearer. If Chu Mu could understand these ancient characters, he would definitely be able to understand the meaning of these 2 characters. Suddenly, a rumbling sound came from above, as if thunder was rolling. The ground under their feet also shook, and the surrounding rocks and trees also rolled and swayed. The rumbling continued for a long time before it stopped, and everything returned to normal. Chumu raised his head and looked up. After thinking for a moment, his eyes suddenly lit up. This kind of vibration was most likely related to the birth of some kind of treasure. It reminded Chumu of the time when he was still in the Qingfeng sword sect. The vibration of Qinglan Mountain was a sign that the Qinglan Void Realm was about to appear. Treasures belonged to those who were capable. Although Chumu did not think that he was capable, he still wanted to see this treasure. If he could, he would naturally want to take it for himself. 3 days later, 2 pieces of news spread throughout Demon Shaker City, but they were completely unrelated. The first piece of news was that a treasure had appeared in the Chaos Demon Mountains. Many swordsmen from various forces in Demon Shaker City began to move. There were also many small groups of swordsmen who left Demon Shaker City in groups of 3 to 5 to enter the Chaos Demon Plains. It was said that it was a cave dwelling. Rumor had it that there were many treasures in the cave dwelling. As long as one could enter the cave dwelling, they would be able to obtain those treasures. There were even rumors that the cave dwelling was left behind by a powerhouse whose cultivation had surpassed the primary realm. There might be the inheritance of that powerhouse inside. Once one obtained his inheritance, they would definitely be able to soar to the sky and attract attention. All in all, the rumors about the cave dwelling were getting more and more outrageous. Some people even said that it was a cave dwelling left behind by the sword of Gojoseon. This made those who did not know the truth even more excited. It was the sword of Gojoseon. According to the records, there were only a dozen or so sword of Gojoseon in the entire Great Kuan dynasty. They were top-notch peerless experts, super powerful existences that reigned supreme in the entire dynasty. Every single one of them was above the royal authority. If one could obtain the inheritance of a sword of Gojoseon and cultivate it to a certain level, they would be able to do whatever they wanted in the Great Kuan dynasty. They would even be able to roam freely in the Eastern Sword region. Who didn't want to be invincible in this world? As a result, some swordsmen who were merely at the Sword Chi realm left Demon Shaker City recklessly. They ventured deep into the Chaos Demon Plains in an attempt to enter the cave dwelling in the Chaos Demon Mountains and see if they could obtain the inheritance. Obtaining the inheritance had nothing to do with one's cultivation. In history, there were many stories of people with low cultivation who managed to obtain the inheritance and soared to the heavens. However, once a mere Sword Chi realm cultivator entered the Chaos Demon Plains, even if they didn't die to the swords of other swordsmen, they would die to the claws of demonic beasts. The weakest demonic beasts that resided in the Chaos Demon Plains were low-level, low-tier demonic beasts. The second piece of news came from Mr. Yin, who was known as Mr. Nice. In the Chaos Demon Plains, he had been injured by a swordsman who was less than 20 years old but possessed the cultivation of Sword Chi at the Chi transformation realm. The swordsman had disguised himself as an initial Chi transformation realm cultivator and wore moon-white robes. He had almost lost his life to the swordsman's sword. The swordsman had poisoned 4 people with the surname Liu. One of them was in his 30s, while the other 3 were in their 20s. He had killed them and stolen their belongings. Mr. Yin had just happened to witness this, so the swordsman had attacked him to silence him. If it weren't for the fact that Mr. Yin was strong enough, he probably would have died to the swordsman's sword already. When this news spread, it immediately incited the fury of many people. There were many people in Demon Shaker City who had received Mr. Yin's help. Coupled with the reputation he had built up over the years, Mr. Yin had a group of admirers. As a result, many swordsmen clamored to find that damned young swordsman in white robes. They had to capture him and bring him to Mr. Yin to repent, and so on. Even the city lord's mansion had mobilized some experts because the current city lord was surnamed Liu. A swordsman who is less than 20 years old and wears moon-white robes. Could it be him? The Iron Sword Gang's Han Yi frowned thoughtfully. Soon after, he shook his head. It shouldn't be. He's not that kind of person. I believe in my judgment. Han Yi was 80% sure that the person Mr. Yin was talking about was Chu Mu. For a moment, he couldn't accept it. One was Mr. Yin, who was known as Mr. Nice and had a good reputation, while the other was someone he had seen and judged with his own eyes. For a moment, the two different thoughts were fighting in his mind, giving Han Yi a headache. "Gang leader, should we set off?" a swordsman beside him asked. "Let's go." Han Yi collected his thoughts and suppressed the two thoughts. With a wave of his hand, the group of people from the Iron Sword Gang left Demon Shaker City under his watch. A cave had appeared in the Chaoyao Mountains. First, it was said to be the cave of a primary realm swordsman. Then it became the cave of a swordsman who had surpassed the primary realm. Finally, it was said to be the cave of a sort of Gojosian. No matter which one it was worth investigating. Not only the Iron Sword Gang, but the Wild Lion Gang and other major powers had also set off. Of course, they didn't go all out. The leaders of the various powers and most of their main forces stayed behind to prevent others from taking advantage of this opportunity to launch an attack. No matter what, because of the appearance of a cave and the news spread by Mr. Yin, the Four Directions cloud was on the move. Chu Mu had also become the target of many swordsmen. Chu Mu, who was already more than 1,000 meters into the Chaoyao Mountains, didn't know about this. He was only following the direction of the tremors and advancing based on his own judgment and intuition. The Chaoyao Mountains had a height of 13,800 meters. After 3 days, Chu Mu had only climbed 1,000 meters, which was enough to show how difficult it was. This was because Chu Mu realized that all the demonic beasts he encountered after entering the Chaoyao Mountains were all mid-level demonic beasts. First, it was low-level demonic beasts, then mid-level demonic beasts. He had even encountered a few mid-level, high-level demonic beasts. Without exception, all these demonic beasts had died under Chu Mu's dark red dagger. The dark red dagger was too terrifying. With Chu Mu's strength, it would be hard for him to win against mid-level, high-level demonic beasts. However, he could hold on for a while. While holding on, he could use the dark red dagger to achieve miraculous results. Demonic beasts were much less intelligent than humans. Most of them were good at close combat. When facing an attack, they would dodge if they could, and if they couldn't, they would fight back and kill their opponent. This was a huge difference between a demonic beast and a human. Therefore, using the dark red dagger had a higher chance of killing mid-level, high-level demonic beasts. However, it was very difficult to kill a Qi high swordsman like Deshang unless the opponent couldn't react in time. The blood of mid-level demonic beasts was much more effective than the blood of low-level demonic beasts. After absorbing the blood of another dozen mid-level demonic beasts, the two words on the dark red dagger became clearer. Chu Mu estimated that after absorbing the blood of another 20 to 30 mid-level demonic beasts, the two words on the dark red dagger would become clearer. At that time, the dark red dagger would appear. This made Chu Mu even more expectant. He lifted his head and looked up. There were craggy rocks protruding out of the forest. There were also trees overgrown with weeds. Countless vines climbed up the rocks, causing the rocks and trees to be filled with ancient vicissitudes. Moon White Robe, less than 20 years old, soared Qi waves of Qi transformation stage. The person that Mr. Yin was talking about is here. Suddenly, a cry of surprise sounded out. Where? Where is the bastard that dared to plot against Mr. Yin? Loud shouts came from afar, filled with anger. When they reached Chu Mu's ears, Chu Mu was startled. Only then did he react. Mr. Yin. Chu Mu couldn't help but remember the words that Mr. Yin said when he ran away. From now on, you will be hunted down endlessly. So that's how it was. Mr. Yin must have escaped back to the demon-shaking city and spread the news. using his reputation as a nice guy to suppress him. That's why Chu Mu suddenly became a rat on the street. At this time, there should be a lot of people who want to kill him. Thinking of this, Chu Mu's eyes suddenly shone with a sharp light like the edge of a sword. These people who were deceived by Mr. Yin, no matter who they were, no matter what their goal was, as long as they wanted to kill him, there was only one end for them: death. Chu Mu's sword would definitely not show any mercy. Just at this moment, a series of wind-breaking sounds rang out as figures rapidly approached, forming an encirclement around Chu Mu. To be continued. If you liked this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 395. About 3,000 meters away from the Chaoyao Mountains, a large number of swordsmen had gathered. There were even more swordsmen who had rushed over from the foot of the mountain. Not long after, a moon-white figure flew over like a startled swan and landed lightly like a feather. The newcomer was Chu Mu. Earlier, he had been surrounded by a dozen swordsmen who had tried to capture Chu Mu alive and bring him back to Mr. Yin. Unfortunately, Chu Mu was too nimble for them to catch. So they gave up on the idea of capturing Chu Mu alive and instead focused on killing Chu Mu. Unsurprisingly, there were only a dozen or so Qi transforming sword practitioners who hadn't even comprehended the surface of sword force. How could they be Chu Mu's opponent? One breath, one sword, one kill. In the blink of an eye, the dozen or so sword practitioners all died under Chu Mu's sword. The only one left alive was interrogated by Chu Mu before being sent to the afterlife. Because of this, Chu Mu learned of the location of the cave and quickly rushed over. He didn't want to be too late and end up empty-handed. As soon as he appeared, many eyes fell on Chu Mu. Soon after, many of them revealed looks of ridicule and killing intent as they locked onto Chu Mu. What was even more interesting was that the 10 Golden Lion swordsmen of the Wild Lion Gang had also arrived. Moreover, some of the gang's main force had also arrived. When Chu Mu appeared, all of their gazes fell on Chu Mu, killing intent shooting out from their eyes. The target has appeared. One of the Golden Lion swordsmen said with a cold expression. The other 9 Golden Lion swordsmen also had cold expressions, killing intent rising in their hearts. They had been tracking Chu Mu for several days now, but they hadn't been able to find him. This made the Golden Lion swordsmen, who were quite confident in their tracking skills, very angry. Now that Chu Mu had appeared in front of them, it was tantamount to delivering meat to their mouths. Each and every one of them gripped the hilts of their swords, thinking of drawing their swords and directly killing Chu Mu. Brat, you clearly have the cultivation of the Qi transformation realm. Why are you pretending to be at the initial stage of the Qi transformation realm? Are you planning to sneak attack us? A swordsman with the Qi transformation realm said coldly to Chu Mu. His words were like a fuse. Even more people stared at Chu Mu with malicious gazes. However, for a moment, no one made the first move, causing the atmosphere to become extremely strange and desolate. Chu Mu only glanced at him indifferently. He didn't answer because he didn't need to. The purpose of this person's words was to provoke him. No matter what Chu Mu said, it would only incite the other party to further pressure him with words, which would eventually lead to him becoming everyone's enemy. You have nothing to say, you treacherous villain. You even injured great Mr. Yin. Great Mr. Yin is kind enough to not bicker with you, but I have received a favor from great Mr. Yin. Today, I will capture you, you treacherous villain. As soon as he finished speaking, the swordsman's body flashed. He was like a poisonous snake slithering out of its cave. He wasn't fast, but he was strange and unpredictable. With a slight clang, he pulled out his sword and stabbed it towards Chu Mu. Sword Qi and the power of Intent Realm were infused into the sword, causing it to be incomparably swift and fierce. It was like a cold light shuttling through the air. Before the sword arrived, its sharpness had already cut through the air with a hissing sound, causing a chill to sweep through the air. Many people's gazes contained traces of ridicule. The Golden Lion sword guards of the Wild Lion Gang also released their grip on their swords. They all stared at Chumu with sharp eyes, wanting to see how Chumu would deal with this sword attack. If Chumu's cultivation was at the peak of the Chi transformation realm, then it wouldn't be so easy for him to deal with this sword attack. Chumu didn't move at all. His expression didn't change. It was as if he was scared stiff. Just when the sword was 3 meters away from Chumu moved his hand. The crowd only heard a clanging sound, and they could vaguely see a blurry flash of sword light. The Chi-Hai realm swordsmen squinted their eyes to see more clearly, but it was still a bit blurry. The sword light was like a dream. It shattered and disappeared in an instant. The sword that was stabbing towards Chumu stopped 2 meters away from Chumu. In the eyes of others, Chumu's sword was still in the scabbard and had never been unsheathed. The swordsmen in front of Chumu didn't know what was going on, but the swordsmen behind Chumu all had a change in expression. Their pupils contracted as they looked at the throat of the swordsman. There was a flower of blood there. It was sad but beautiful. With a bang, dust filled the air. The swordsman fell backwards with his sword in hand. His eyes were wide open and filled with confusion. He died with his eyes wide open. Suddenly, the crowd became silent. Even the Chi-Hai swordsmen felt their hairs stand on end. They looked at Chumu's sword and couldn't help but swallow their saliva. They felt a slight pain in their throats. Fast, it was too fast. It was as if Chumu didn't even use his sword. But the wound on the corpse's throat told them that the young swordsman in the moon-white robe had used his sword. The 10 Golden Lion sword guards suddenly felt their hairs stand on end. They were all at the peak of the Chi transformation realm. The leader was even at the peak of the Chi transformation realm. Any one of them was stronger than the swordsman who was killed. But there was a limit to how strong they could be. It was impossible for them to kill the swordsman in one strike. They all had a feeling that if they were to face Chumu's sword, they would have died as well. At this moment, all of the sword artists present were extremely afraid of Chumu. This was because the strongest sword artist here was only at the low Chi-Hai realm. Chumu's sword attack speed was so fast that even a low Chi-Hai realm sword artist would be shocked. He is only one person. No matter how fast his sword is, can he kill dozens of people in an instant? Suddenly, someone said coldly, waking everyone up, "Don't forget, after the cave appears, the less people there are, the more rewards there will be." With this, Chumu became everyone's target again. The other swordsmen were all in groups. Only Chumu was alone. But the strength he showed was so terrifying that he could kill Chi transformation realm swordsmen in an instant and shock low Chi-Hai realm swordsmen. It was obvious that this person was cruel and merciless. Once he entered the cave, he would become everyone's biggest obstacle. You dare to kill people from the mayor's mansion? Only death awaits you. The 23 brothers of the Wild Lion Gang are waiting for your head to be sacrificed. Mr. Yin is a righteous man. You dared to injure Mr. Yin. We will settle this score with you on behalf of Mr. Yin. Shouts sounded out one after another. Many Chi locked onto Chumu. Most of the swordsmen took a step forward. Their aura was cold and murderous. Gusts of wind blew and dust filled the air. Chumu's heart tightened. There were hundreds of Chi locked onto him. Among them, there were even Chi-Hai realm swordsmen. He didn't show it on his face, but he knew in his heart that this was the first time he had encountered such danger since he came to the ancient sword continent. If all of these people attacked at the same time, even if they didn't have a combined attack skill, he would be in big trouble. The violent sword Chi was enough to tear him to pieces. Although Chumu didn't show it on his face, he was calculating quickly in his mind. His brain was spinning fast, and all kinds of possibilities appeared in his mind. He eliminated them one by one. Danger. This was a danger he had never faced before. Being surrounded by so many powerful swordsmen. Chu Mu didn't have the confidence to escape safely, but he wasn't afraid. The heavenly origin, sword chi, was moving faster in his meridians. In a short while, it had completed a full cycle. Moreover, it was moving faster and faster. Even Chi-Hai realm swordsmen would be shocked by this speed. If it was in the past, Chu Mu would definitely restrain it. However, ever since his meridians had undergone the heavenly desolation transformation, they had become even more resilient. This level of sword aura transport was unable to place any burden on his meridians, so Chu Mu allowed the sword aura to continue to accelerate. He realized that with this speed of movement, the sword chi was purifying bit by bit. To reach the 9th revolution of the 9 revolutions of heavenly origin, one had to start from the purity of the sword chi. When the sword chi reached a certain level of purity, it would naturally break through to the 9th revolution. Chu Mu had also been purifying the sword chi. According to his progress, he estimated that within 3 months, the sword chi would reach the requirement to break through to the 9th revolution. And now, under the pressure of hundreds of swordsmen's killing intent, Chu Mu also gained a lot of motivation. Naturally, the sword chi moved faster. Kill him. A deep voice suddenly sounded. In a split second, hundreds of swordsmen were about to pull out their swords. Suddenly, a ferocious aura descended from the sky. It was as if an ancient beast had awakened. This kind of ferocious aura was earth-shattering. It crushed down and made everyone feel like ants. For a moment, they were unable to move. Everyone's faces turned pale and cold sweat appeared on their foreheads. Including Chu Mu. Everyone immediately raised their heads and looked up. Their eyes were filled with vigilance. This ferocious aura that came out of nowhere, like a flash flood, gave Chu Mu a familiar feeling. Then, a figure suddenly appeared in the sky. It was not big, but it gave people the feeling that it covered the sky. Everyone felt as if they were covered by a shadow. Anyone would tremble under this figure. The figure landed right in the middle of everyone. It was a bald monk's head that could reflect light. It was wearing a gray robe that resembled a monk's robe. There was a red mole in between his eyebrows. His eyes were long and narrow. His appearance was indescribably strange. Sky Slaughterer. This person is my target. I will kill anyone who touches him. Sky Slaughterer's narrow eyes first landed on Chu Mu, then slowly scanned through everyone. There was no threat or intimidation. He only said that sentence in a very calm tone. Everyone was shocked. They quickly let go of their swords and retracted their killing intent. They looked at Chu Mu with pity. So he was the target of the Sky Slaughterer. They were all very familiar with the Sky Slaughterer way of doing things. Anyone who was targeted by him was definitely not someone a normal swordsman could compare with. It was not an exaggeration to call him a genius. However, once targeted by the Sky Slaughterer, it was indeed safe for a certain period of time. Once the time was up, they would die under the Sky Slaughterer's sword. This had been proven many times and had never been wrong. Although they did not want to die under the Sky Slaughterer's sword with their own hands, since he was already the target of the Sky Slaughterer, he would die sooner or later. There was no need to offend the Sky Slaughterer for someone who was already dead. Even a force like the Red Dress Association would not want to offend an enemy like the Sky Slaughterer. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 396. To the left. We'll go to the right. Shouts rang out one after another as orders were quickly passed down. Different forces made different choices and headed in different directions. Not long after the ferocious Sword Void Butcher appeared, the cave also appeared. Colorful seals blocked the swordsmen outside. Perhaps it was because too much time had passed and it was damaged, but the seal was not particularly powerful. Under the attacks of several hundred swordsmen, the power of the seal was completely worn away and broken, revealing a huge entrance to the dwelling. As soon as the entrance to the dwelling appeared, several hundred people rushed in. Everyone wanted to be the first to enter. Void Butcher unleashed an extremely terrifying aura of violence and instantly suppressed the several hundred swordsmen. He became the first to enter the dwelling. Countless people yearned for such boldness and ability. After about 10 breaths of time had passed since everyone had entered the cave, a blood-red light quickly flew over from afar. After pausing for a moment, it shot into the cave like an arrow and disappeared. All the abodes left behind by the senior experts had similar internal specifications. They were basically divided into different areas. For example, there were pill rooms, sword rooms, treasure rooms, and so on. Perhaps they were not directly named, but overall their functions were the same. As a result, as long as one could find these areas, they would be able to obtain the various treasures within the dwelling. This was a common understanding. The problem was that no one had entered this cave mansion before. Perhaps no one was familiar with the interior of the cave mansion, except for the owner of the cave mansion. Therefore, no one knew where those elixir rooms, swords, and tools rooms were located. To find it, one had to rely on a bit of luck. Of course, some people had a deep understanding of the Immortals' Cave. They could more or less find the pattern of the Immortals' Cave based on their ability. They could quickly find the important areas, such as the pill room and so on, and thus get the treasures first. At a time like this, it could be said that whether or not they could obtain the treasures and what kind of treasures they could obtain would depend on their own abilities. After everyone entered, the first path was the cave. As they continued forward, several hundred people rushed forward according to different factions. After a while, the cave split into 3 paths, one on the left, the middle, and the right. This put everyone in a difficult position. Some senior experts liked to play pranks. They would make some forks out of nowhere. These forks might lead to the same place, or they might lead to different places. After some hesitation, everyone made different choices. Chu Mu still chose the right fork based on his intuition and strode forward. Because they had split into 3 groups, the number of swordsmen who took the right fork had decreased significantly. However, they still kept a certain distance from each other to guard against any sudden attacks. From time to time, they would glance at Chu Mu with murderous intent. If it weren't for Void Butcher, they would have drawn their swords and killed Chu Mu first. At the top of the tunnel, there was a luminous pearl embedded every 20 meters. It released a soft and bright light, illuminating the tunnel as if it was daytime. As they walked, they were once again dumbfounded. They had no choice but to stop because 6 forks had appeared in front of them. What the hell is going on? A swordsman from the Red Coat Association muttered with his mouth wide open. Everyone looked at the 6 glowing entrances. They had no idea where the entrances led to. Chu Mu was also speechless. Could it be that the senior who left behind this cave was just playing pranks? No matter what, since they had already entered the cave, they had to continue walking to find out if this was a joke or if they could truly obtain treasures. Without another word, Chu Mu's body flashed, and he chose the rightmost fork based on his intuition. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared before everyone's eyes. Seeing Chu Mu's actions, the other swordsmen all came to their senses. Who cares? Since we're already here, are we going to return empty-handed? That's right. This might be a test. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone once again chose a different path to enter. Originally, there were about 300 swordsmen who had entered the cave. At the beginning, there were 3 forks, and each fork had about 100 people. Now there were 6 forks. After choosing different paths, the number of people was relatively equal. Usually, different forces would not choose the same path. This way, they could avoid conflicts between them and cause unnecessary casualties. "Let's go this way," a swordsman said as he stared at the rightmost fork. With a wave of his hand, a dozen people quickly moved towards that fork. These people had the surname Liu. Other than these swordsmen, 5 other swordsmen also chose the rightmost fork. They were going the same way as Chu Mu. At this point, Chu Mu did not have much confidence. He could only rely on luck. Chu Mu's speed was very fast. The 20 swordsmen behind him were not slow either. Each of them was at least at the initial success stage of Qi transformation. "What should we do?" one of the swordsmen with the surname Lu said in a low voice. "We can't kill or capture him. Otherwise, we will offend Void Butcher." Another person said, "Swordsmen like Void Butcher were the most dangerous. He was alone and had no ties. His strength was also very strong. Normal swordsmen at the peak of Qi Hai were not his opponents. If such a person was determined to go against you, even if there were Origin realm warriors in the mayor's palace, they would not be able to guard against him all the time. Then the people in the mayor's palace would have to go out. They could not hide in the palace forever. Not only would it be uncomfortable, it would also become a joke. If we do it secretly, Void Butcher will not be able to find a reason and will not dare to attack us." One of the swordsmen's eyes suddenly brightened as he said in a low voice, "That's right. The swordsmen that entered the cave came from different forces. There are more than 10 of them. As long as we do it cleanly, Void Butcher will not know who did it. No matter how strong he is, he cannot offend more than 10 forces one by one." If that's the case, just as he finished speaking, one of the swordsmen suddenly pulled out his sword and turned around. He performed a sword light, which was even brighter than the light from the bright light pearls. It was so sudden that the swordsmen walking not far behind were not prepared at all. By the time they reacted, before they could even pull out their swords, their protective sword Qi had already been torn apart, and their bodies pierced through by streaks of sword light. The one who attacked was a Qi Hai warrior. Even if he was only at the beginning of the Qi Hai realm, he was still not someone they could deal with. Right now, there are only us in this tunnel. The Qi Hai warrior put his sword back into the scabbard and said softly, "Chase." The Qi Hai warrior, who had been silent all this time, said in a deep voice, "Yes." Immediately, the swordsmen from the mayor's palace increased their speed and chased after Chu Mu. However, Chu Mu's speed was very fast. He kept moving forward without stopping. When the people from the mayor's palace slowed down to discuss, the distance between them and Chu Mu was increasing. When the people from the mayor's palace rushed out of the tunnel, they were completely dumbfounded. If it was someone with a bad temper, they would have jumped up and down in anger and wanted to kill someone. Think about it. At the beginning, there were 3 forks in the tunnel. After choosing, there were 6 forks. Now there were 9 more. Would there be more forks in the tunnel? Even if there were no more forks, how many forks were there? Did the owner of this cave have nothing better to do? Did he purposely dig forks here to fool people? 9 forks appeared in front of them. Maybe they would lead to the same place, or maybe they would lead to different places. Other than that, they did not see the white-robed figure that wanted to kill them. Now, facing the 9 forks, they did not know which one Chu Mu had chosen. There must be some traces left behind. Look carefully. The Qi Hai warrior said with a hoarse voice. It was obvious that he was angry. The dozen or so swordsmen immediately split up, carefully inspecting each of the 9 forks to see if there were any recent traces left behind. No matter which fork Chu Mu chose to enter, he would definitely leave behind some traces that were different from the past that would become clues to follow. However, after the swordsmen from the mayor's palace searched carefully, they could not be sure which fork Chu Mu had chosen. There were 3 forks in total that had new traces. I think we should choose the rightmost fork. One of the 2 Qi Hai beginner swordsmen said after thinking for a while. He didn't wait for the others to ask and immediately explained. The first 2 times he chose the right path, he didn't think too much and directly chose the right path. That is to say, this person made his choice based on his intuition and his preferences. Now, there are traces left behind on the rightmost fork. This means that this person chose the rightmost fork again. After the analysis, everyone nodded their heads. What he said was very reasonable. Thinking about it carefully, the young swordsman in the white robe did choose the rightmost fork twice in a row. Go to the rightmost fork, full speed ahead. The only sword warrior who was at the low chi-high level had a bright light shining in his eyes. He glanced around, and his eyes landed on the right side of the 9 paths. He turned into a beam of light and shot into the path. Soon after, the other sword warriors from the mayor's mansion also started to move and chased after him with their fastest speed. However, they were wrong. This time, Chu-Mu did not choose the rightmost fork. Instead, he chose the leftmost fork. The people from the mayor's palace had always wanted to kill Chu-Mu. This killing intent leaked out unintentionally and was noticed by Chu-Mu. After Chu-Mu chose the rightmost fork twice, the people from the mayor's palace also chose the rightmost fork. There was a low chi-high realm, 2 beginner chi-high realm swordsmen, and 12 peak chi transforming swordsmen. Chu-Mu didn't have much confidence in winning against such a group, so he tried his best to avoid them. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 397. They didn't chase after me. Inside the fork, Chu-Mu let out a sigh of relief. He wasn't confident that he could get rid of them, but he had to try. It would be best if he could get rid of them. But if he couldn't, then he had to be prepared to fight for his life. The 12 peak chi transforming swordsmen were still manageable, but the key was the 3 chi-high realm warriors. Chu-Mu could definitely kill them one-on-one. But if the 3 of them worked together with the 12 peak chi transforming swordsmen, even a chi transforming swordsman like Deshang would have a hard time dealing with them. Luckily, the dozen swordsmen didn't choose the leftmost fork, but the rightmost one. Relaxing his mind, Chu-Mu increased his speed. He had 2 questions in his mind. First, why are there so many forks in this cave? Moreover, it has been at least an hour since I entered the cave. Apart from the passageways and forks, there is nothing else. There is no sign of any treasures or whatnot. Second, according to the rumors, this was a cave left behind by an astral realm warrior or someone who had surpassed the astral realm or even the sword of Gojoseon. Then even other astral realm warriors would be tempted. But out of the hundreds of swordsmen who came here, the strongest one was only at the peak chi-high realm or someone as fierce as the Sky Slaughterer. Why was this so? There were only 2 possibilities. First, there was a restriction that prevented those who were above the chi-high realm from entering. Second, this cave wasn't left behind by an astral realm warrior, and it was impossible for it to be left behind by someone who had surpassed the astral realm or even the sword of Gojoseon. This was why it wasn't attractive to 9 transformation realm and astral realm swordsmen. As for whether there were other possibilities, Chu-Mu wasn't sure. All in all, it was a fact that no swordsman above the chi-high realm had come here. Could it be that this was just a misunderstanding? Chu-Mu suddenly thought of this possibility. As he thought about it, he continued to move forward. Unknowingly, he had reached the end of the fork. Just as Chu-Mu was wondering if there would be another 12 forks, he saw a lonely pavilion in front of him. The entire pavilion stood in the middle of the cave, looking very strange. The pavilion was nameless and had a total of 2 floors. Vaguely, Chu-Mu seemed to see the power of a seal. Chu-Mu looked around and checked carefully. He didn't find anything, so he focused all his attention on the pavilion. He gently shot out a strand of sword chi, which was instantly obliterated by the sealing power of the pavilion. However, it only caused ripples on the surface of the seal, which slowly spread out. Instead of attacking again, Chu-Mu focused on the faintly discernible sealing power. He was calculating the strength of the sealing power and whether or not he could break it. After 10 breaths of time, Chu-Mu's right hand flashed like lightning as the swift void sword left its scabbard. The powerful sword was like a bolt of lightning as it pierced through the barrier of the pavilion. Not only did this sword have 1% of the sword force, but it also activated the stone trembling force at the last moment when it stabbed into the seal. With one sword strike, the seal instantly caved in by several centimeters, and ripples continuously spread out under the stone trembling force. But it did not break. On the contrary, the seal suddenly exploded with a rebounding force. This force was very tyrannical, and it was not inferior to Chu Mu's sword strike at all. Chu Mu's sword was suddenly bounced back, and the blade was slightly bent. A shock wave passed through the blade and rushed towards Chu Mu's hand like lightning. Stone trembling, second drive. Chu Mu shouted in his mind, and the muscles in his upper body trembled at a high frequency. Waves of tyrannical power instantly erupted, surging like a tidal wave towards his right arm. The muscles in his right arm swelled and contracted, and they vibrated at an extremely fast speed, instantly transferring all the power in his body to his palm. The two forces collided in his palm, and in an instant, the two forces formed a unique spiral under Chu Mu's control, merging into one and rushing towards the swift void sword. The swift void sword instantly vibrated at an even higher frequency, and a double shock wave reached the tip of the sword. His arm suddenly thrust forward, and the sword pierced out again, still with 1% of the sword's power. The powerful seal once again caved inwards. This time, the rebound force hadn't even been generated yet, and the seal had already reached its limit. A bow sound rang out, sounding extremely crisp in Chu Mu's ears. Like a bubble bursting, the seal on the pavilion was also pierced by Chu Mu's stone trembling second drive. Once a part of the seal was damaged, it would become incomplete. Even if the other parts of the seal were still intact, it would be greatly weakened. Shwa shwa shwa, sword light flew out, and under the swift void sword, the seal on the pavilion became as fragile as a thin piece of paper. Chu Mu's body flashed, and he directly passed through the broken part of the seal and entered the pavilion. The first floor of the pavilion was empty and spotless. Not only did the seal have the power to prevent others from entering, but it also had the ability to prevent dust. Chu Mu's eyes swept over the first floor, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. He slowly scanned the first floor, searching carefully, but he did not find anything special. Involuntarily, his gaze slowly followed the stairs to the second floor. Perhaps there would be some treasures on the second floor. His body flashed, and Chu Mu arrived at the stairs, and his footsteps quickly reached the second floor. On the second floor, there was a bed and a table. The bed was empty, and there were two things on the table which immediately caught Chu Mu's gaze. One was a fist-sized bead, transparent and bright, like a crystal ball, pure and flawless, but Chu Mu could not see what it was. The other thing was a piece of armor. The crystal ball and the armor were both covered by seals. Chu Mu looked at them for a while, and then gently pointed his finger and sent out 2 strands of sword chi to probe. Chu Mu was not proficient in seals, and he could only rely on his strength to break them, but he knew one thing. Some seals were closely related to the things inside the seal, and if he was not careful when breaking the seal, it was very likely that after breaking the seal, the things inside the seal would be damaged or even self-destructed. He could not see what use the crystal ball had, and he did not know what grade the armor was. But Chu Mu felt that these 2 things should be good. Again and again he used his finger to shoot out sword auras to test the strength of the seals on the crystal ball and armor. After a moment, Chu Mu finally knew exactly how strong a force was needed to break open the seals on these 2 items without damaging them. The spatial speed sword came out of its scabbard again, and the sword shot out like lightning. In an instant, there was a flash of cold light, and with a pop, the seal on the armor was broken by the tip of the spatial speed sword. Chu Mu controlled the power of this sword very well, and it only broke the seal without damaging the armor at all. Once the seal was broken, even a small damage would affect the overall strength of the armor. Chu Mu's wrist trembled, and the tip of the sword flashed with a cold light. It was like a magic brush in the hands of a calligraphy master. After a breath of time, All the seals on the armor were broken, and the armor was not affected in the slightest. The spatial speed sword stabbed out, and the armor gently flew into Chu Mu's hand. This armor was not made of metal, and it was more like a layer of very tough skin. It was silver-white in color, and there were faint feather-like patterns on it. It was as light as a feather in Yang Kai's hand. Chu Mu estimated that this armor was at least mid-grade. He dripped a drop of blood on it, and there was a simple message about this armor. Feathery patterned armor. High-grade armor. Good. Chu Mu's face suddenly lit up with joy. An armor of the same grade was at least 5 times more valuable than a sword, and it was even possible for it to be 10 times more valuable. This feathery patterned armor's value was probably close to that of a top-grade sword. Moreover, armors were often rarer than swords. On one hand, it required more materials to forge, and on the other hand, it required a higher level of attainment and craftsmanship. Not only is it tough enough to reach the level of a high-grade armor, but it can also be injected with sword chi to form a layer of protection. With this high-grade armor, not only can it block the sharpness of a high-grade sword, but it can also weaken the attack of a top-grade sword to a certain extent. Chu Mu secretly thought, and quickly put on the feathery patterned armor. The feathery patterned armor stuck close to his skin, and a burst of coolness spread throughout his body, making Chu Mu involuntarily shiver, as if his whole body had become more energetic. This feathery patterned armor not only had a protective effect, but also had a refreshing effect. Although the refreshing effect was not obvious, it was better than nothing. Such a high-grade armor was even more valuable than the profound star sword. Chu Mu attacked another seal with his sword. Not long after, that seal was also broken by Chu Mu, and the sealed crystal ball fell into Chu Mu's hand. Contrary to the feathery patterned armor, this crystal ball was quite heavy, definitely more than 5 kilograms, which was very inconsistent with its size. Chu Mu held the crystal ball in his palm and carefully looked at it. No matter how he looked at it, he could not see what this crystal ball was used for. His mind moved, and he cut his finger and squeezed out a drop of blood on the crystal ball. In an instant, the blood was absorbed by the crystal ball and melted, using a spiritual imprint. After 3 breaths, the blood disappeared, and the crystal ball returned to its original flawless and transparent appearance. Chu Mu had a trace of connection with the crystal ball, and he also knew what this crystal ball was. Sealed Beast Pearl. This was the name of the crystal ball. The so-called Sealed Beast Pearl, as the name implied, was a secret treasure that could seal a monster beast inside. Monster beasts were the natural enemies of human beings, but under certain circumstances, they could be of help to human beings. For example, they could be tamed by human beings, but it usually took a long time to tame them, and it was best to tame them when they were eggs or young. However, some swordsmen did not have such patience. They needed tools that could be sacrificed for them at any time. The Sealed Beast Pearl was born under the research of some secret treasure masters. Just like swords, beast sealed pearls had different grades. The lower the grade, the lower the required materials, and the lower the difficulty of making them. The higher the grade, the more difficult the materials, and the higher the grade. In theory, a low-grade sealed beast pearl could seal a low-grade monster beast, a mid-grade one could seal a middle-grade monster beast, and a high-grade one could seal a high-grade one. The sealed beast pearl in Chu Mu's hand was a mid-grade one, and it was an empty one. In other words, Chu Mu could use this sealed beast pearl to seal a middle-grade monster beast for his own use. At this moment, a series of undisguised footsteps came from outside, and Chu Mu's heart suddenly jumped. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 398. There were no windows on the 2nd floor of the pavilion. Chu Mu could only faintly hear the undisguised footsteps, but could not see the situation outside. After putting the beast seal bead into the space bracelet, Chu Mu quickly went downstairs and rushed out of the 1st floor without stopping. There was a blood-red figure in front of him, and then a terrifying murderous aura spread out like a surging tide. The murderous aura was so cold that it made Chumu feel numb all over. His blood almost stopped flowing, and his muscles felt numb. Chumu's pupils shrank sharply. The Tianyuan sword chi instantly accelerated, and with the ripping essence added to his body, he turned into a sharp sword and shot out quickly. "Where do you think you're going?" The light voice carried a bit of cold killing intent and an irresistible shock. Following that, the bloody killing intent increased by 2 times and swept over with a loud bang. The remaining broken seal of the pavilion was instantly destroyed under the impact of this terrifying killing intent. Chumu felt as if he had become a small boat in a stormy sea. He was constantly being battered on the raging sea and was in danger of being destroyed at any time. Then a blood-red crescent moon slashed through the air, locked onto Chumu, and arrived in front of him in the blink of an eye. Chumu's pores almost exploded. His heart almost jumped out of his chest, and his black hair almost stood up. This attack made him feel a fatal crisis. Following his instinct of wandering between life and death many times, he poured the Tianyuan sword chi into the feather-patterned armor. In an instant, the feather-patterned armor slightly trembled and released a layer of silver-white protection. Together with the protective sword chi, it could completely block the sharpness of an upper-grade sword. It was not enough. It was far from enough. The rapid sky sword was unsheathed like lightning. The Tianyuan sword chi and the ripping essence were mixed with 1% of the sword chi and instantly slashed out, turning into a dark golden crescent moon and slashing towards the blood-red crescent moon. With a crisp sound, the dark golden crescent moon was shattered. Half of the blood-red crescent moon was shattered, but the other half was still coming at him with unstoppable force. Chumu's heart was beating so fast that it felt as though his chest was about to explode. Large amounts of blood surged through his entire body. Chumu felt as though his blood vessels were about to burst apart. His mind was highly focused and focused like never before. Everything around him suddenly became incomparably clear. Even the sound and trajectory of the dust particles seemed to be clearly presented. In just an instant, in less than 1,000th of a second, half of the blood-red crescent moon had already touched Chumu's protective sword aura. The strengthened protective sword aura didn't have any resistance and was instantly ripped apart as if it didn't exist. The silver shield of the feathered armor was also instantly touched by the blood-red crescent moon. It paused for a moment, and with a pop the silver shield shattered. The blood-red crescent moon was about to hit Chumu. At this critical moment, Chumu's muscles began to vibrate at a high speed. The Tianyuan sword chi was all used to strengthen the protective sword energy and stimulate the shield of the feathered armor. At this moment, he was using the vibration of his muscles to forcefully move 1 foot on the ground. This 1 foot was the boundary between life and death. The blood-red crescent moon almost brushed past Chumu's arm and slashed several meters into the hole. Chumu also felt that the blood in half of his body seemed to have frozen. His muscles were numb, and his entire arm seemed to have lost all feeling. It was as if it had nothing to do with him anymore. Terrifying, extremely terrifying. Just this one attack had almost taken Chumu's life. Ignoring his arm that had lost all feeling, Chumu did not dare to hold back. The Tianyuan sword chi once again erupted with full power. Under this kind of crisis, all of his soul force was mobilized. The degree of concentration of his mind was shocking. In an instant, Chumu's potential erupted with 300% in order to survive. Chumu himself didn't even know that in that instant, Phantom Step, Gale Passing Shadow, and Wind Travel were all used in an instant, combining the 3 into 1. 11 figures appeared one after another, and it was difficult to distinguish between the real and the fake. Not only were they fleeting, but they were also incredibly fast. In an instant, they rushed in different directions. Some of them drew their swords and rushed towards the blood-red figure, while others quickly rushed into the tunnel and disappeared in an instant. The blood-red figure only waved his sword, and the blood-red sword light scattered all around. Under this blood-red light, several figures instantly disappeared. With a casual wave of his hand, a blood-red crescent moon slashed out again and rushed into the tunnel. With a whoosh, it disappeared into the tunnel. This blood-red figure was a young swordsman wearing a blood-red robe. He had blood-red hair, and even his eyebrows were blood-red. His pupils were also blood-red. That pale, bloodless, handsome face revealed a gentleness that would shock even women. He glanced at the passageway. How unexpected! A swordsman at the peak of the consummation of chi transformation was actually able to dodge my attack. How exciting! Blood-red hair, blood-red eyebrows, and blood-red robes. It was the blood-red sword blaze that stood side by side with the Void Slaughterer. Chu Mu did not know whether he was lucky or unlucky. First, he encountered the Void Slaughterer. In the battle half a year later, if it was not for his opponent, he would have died. And now, after obtaining 2 treasures, he encountered the blood-red sword blaze. The blood-red sword blaze was completely different from the Void Slaughterer. It was rumored that the blood-red sword blaze did things according to his preferences. When the Void Slaughterer saw an opponent, he would evaluate and give the opponent some time. However, the blood-red sword blaze would not. Once he saw someone that interested him, he would definitely kill them. It was rumored that his cultivation method was related to this. However, although the blood-red sword blaze was called the blood-red sword, he was not an evil swordsman like the blood-red sword tower. He did not need to absorb blood to cultivate. Otherwise, he would have been besieged and killed. It was rumored that the reason Fun Lai was called the blood-red sword was because he liked to wear red robes. Because of his cultivation, even his hair and eyebrows had turned blood-red. Moreover, once he was injured and bled, his strength would increase. The more he was injured, the stronger he would be. The more he fought, the braver he would be. His cultivation method could even affect his opponent's blood flow to a certain extent. Thus, Fun Lai was called the blood-red sword. Fun Lai first turned into a bloody light and entered the pavilion to take a look. Then he immediately left and quickly followed the passage. He was sure that if there were any treasures in the pavilion, they would have been taken away by the peak of Chi Transformation Realm swordsman. The bloody light paused in the passage and looked at the mark on the wall of the passage. It was made by his sword, which meant that the sword did not kill the target. Thinking of this, the bloody light in Fun Lai's eyes became even more intense. Logically speaking, a mere peak of Chi Transformation Realm swordsman would not be able to arouse his interest. However, which peak of Chi Transformation Realm swordsman could escape from 2 of his attacks? That was all. This meant that this person's talent was definitely outstanding and could be called a genius. Killing such a person would make his blood boil. With a sway of his body, the blood-red sword blaze once again turned into a bloody light. With a whoosh, he rushed out of the passage with the intention of catching up to Chu Mu and killing Chu Mu with his sword. There was no enmity, no resentment, and no connection. It was only because Chu Mu had aroused his interest and made his blood boil. Only by killing him would he be able to enjoy himself. That was all. Chu Mu's speed was extremely fast. He had completely unleashed his potential by using his movement technique. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The sound of wind breaking continuously rang out. Chu Mu turned into a white light and quickly shuttled through the passage. His memory was very good, so he left from the fork he had entered. It was not that Chu Mu did not think of rushing into other forks, but this was not the best method. This was because he knew that the person was the blood-red sword blaze. He also saw the killing intent in the other party's eyes. Combined with what Han Yi had told him about the blood-red sword blaze's habits and so on, Chu Mu quickly made the most correct response and left the cave. The only way was to leave the cave and enter the chaotic Demon Mountain. The chaotic Demon Mountain was so huge. As long as he was careful, he could always avoid the pursuit of the blood-red sword blaze. Chu Mu's blood seemed to be burning. His entire body was hot as if there was a flame burning in his body. The fierce sword void butcher said that the battle would take place half a year later. Chu Mu did not know how strong the fierce sword void butcher was. Legend had it that the strength of the fierce sword void butcher and the other three were close to, or even comparable to, a sword hero. However, after watching the battle between the golden fragment sword hero and the wild dragon sword hero, Chu Mu really could not tell what level the sword hero's strength had reached. Even Chu Mu himself did not know how big the gap between him and a sword hero was. Until today, when he faced the blood-red sword Blaze's attack, Chu Mu truly understood. Compared to the blood-red sword Blaze, he was like a firefly compared to the bright moon. He was like an ant. Then the fierce sword void butcher, who was equally famous as the blood-red sword Blaze, must be as strong. Thinking further, what about the sword hero? There had never been a moment where Chu Mu could not wait to increase his strength. Breakthrough, breakthrough, breakthrough. The heavenly Yuan sword chi was moving through his meridians at an unprecedented speed. It was like a torrent of water rushing through his meridians, one full cycle after another. The heavenly Yuan sword chi that would normally take 15 minutes to move through his meridians was now moving through his meridians in less than a minute. Moreover, it did not cause any burden to his meridians. After the heavenly desolation transformation, his meridians were unbelievably strong. If it was before, with this kind of speed, his meridians would feel uncomfortable after 3 full cycles and would have to stop after 5 full cycles. Otherwise, his meridians would definitely be damaged. At the same time, under this kind of super fast speed, the purity of the sword chi was getting higher and higher. He was getting closer and closer to breaking through the limit of the 9th revolution of Heaven Yuan. Chu Mu's heart was filled with ambition. His blood was boiling and burning. Unknowingly, he felt his soul tremble as if he had broken through something. Suddenly, he understood that the Chi High realm was within reach. If he wanted to, he could break through to the Chi High realm right now. Chu Mu did not hesitate. He gave up on this opportunity to break through and forcefully suppressed it. This was because he had not completed the 9th revolution of Heaven Yuan. His goal was to complete the 9th revolution before breaking through to the Chi High realm. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chijian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 399. A great opportunity to break through to the Chi High realm was given up by Chu Mu. If other swordsmen knew about this, especially those who had been stuck at the peak of the Chi transformation realm for many years, they would probably kill themselves or fight Chu Mu to the death. Breaking through to the Chi High realm was much harder than breaking through to the Chi transformation realm. There were many obstacles and bottlenecks. Therefore, many swordsmen were stuck at the peak of the Chi transformation realm and could not break through to the Chi High realm for many years. Swordsmen's time was very precious. Breaking through a year earlier meant that they had a higher chance of becoming stronger. Therefore, swordsmen would usually break through as soon as they got the opportunity, because when they got the opportunity to break through, they would let nature take its course. They would not force it, and there would not be any side effects. But Chu Mu had his own ideas. He had to break through to the 9th transformation realm before he could break through to the Chi High realm. To him, breaking through to the Chi High realm was not difficult. As long as he finished the 9th transformation, he would be able to break through to the Chi High realm. Now, because of the pressure brought by the blood sword Funlai and the stimulation that Chu Mu received, Chu Mu gave up on the opportunity to break through to the Chi High realm. He planned to follow his original plan and finish the 9th transformation realm first, before breaking through to the Chi High realm. Whether it was Duanmu Xingkong's words or his own intuition, Chu Mu planned to do this. He felt that there would only be benefits and no harm. Since that was the case, why not give up? In an instant, Chu Mu rushed out of the cave and looked around. He then quickly went up the Chaoyao Mountain. If he went down the Chaoyao Mountain back to the Chaoyao Plain, it would be a smooth journey and he would be easily caught by the blood sword Funlai. But if he went up the mountain, not only would the terrain be rugged, there would also be stronger monsters. After 10 breaths of time, a bloody light rushed out of the cave and stopped outside. It was the blood sword Funlai. His eyes flickered with blood-red light, and there was an unusual shade of red on his sickly white face. Light gathered and flickered in his eyes as he swept his gaze across the area. Then he looked towards Chaoyao Mountain, and a strange smile appeared on his face. With a sway of his body, Funlai once again transformed into a streak of bloody light as he swiftly headed up the chaotic demon mountain. Shockingly, he was heading in the direction that Chumu had left in. After about 3 breaths of time, the sound of something breaking through the air suddenly rang out in the sky. The sound was so loud that it was as if an airplane was flying across the sky, bringing with it a series of sharp roars. Following that, several extremely terrifying auras descended. The light in the mountain forest within a radius of 10 miles outside the cave suddenly dimmed, as if it had suddenly turned from noon to dusk. Moreover, it made people feel oppressed and their hearts palpitate. The surrounding demonic beasts didn't even dare to move. One by one, they crawled on the ground, as if even the trees and grass were bent. The air seemed to have frozen. Blood Sword Funlai, who was chasing after Chumu, felt the sudden terrifying aura. His entire body froze as his expression changed greatly. He suddenly raised his head and looked towards the sky. The bloody light in his eyes became abnormally dense, almost piercing through the sky. His hands were tightly clenched into fists as his entire body trembled. Origin Realm. That's right. Funlai was incomparably certain that this was the aura of an Origin Realm expert. Only an Origin Realm expert could release such an aura that was unparalleled. Furthermore, Funlai felt that the aura of an Origin Realm expert wasn't just one, but several. In other words, there were several Origin Realm experts rushing towards this place. This was only a relatively ordinary cave. Why would an Origin Realm expert rush over? Just as this thought appeared in his mind, a few figures suddenly appeared in the sky. They instantly stopped a few hundred meters above him, because they were moving too fast and suddenly stopped. They brought along a strong air current that whistled and attacked. It was as if a tsunami was surging violently. Under the collision, waves of terrifying roars could be heard. Under the impact of this air current, it was as if the waves of the sea were rushing towards him. It actually gave Blood Sword Funlai the illusion that the sky was about to be destroyed. The trees within a 10-mile radius were also crazily swaying and bending under the impact of this air current. It was as if they were being swept up by a storm and were about to be uprooted. Broken branches and leaves filled the sky as they whistled and swept towards the horizon. It was as if dragons and snakes were dancing chaotically. The arrival of an Origin Realm expert was unparalleled. Funlai clenched his teeth and clenched his fists. His nails pierced into his flesh, but he didn't feel the slightest bit of pain. His white face was filled with green veins that bulged out one by one, and blood was seeping out of his gums. The arrival of an Origin Realm expert was unparalleled, causing the weather to change. At the same time, it also brought along an incomparably huge pressure. This pressure was as terrifying as the collapse of a mountain. Even the space had turned dark because of the pressure. How could Funlai, who was only at the Chi-Hai realm, resist it? However, Funlai thought highly of himself. If it wasn't because of his age, he wouldn't be able to become a sword hero. Otherwise, he would have already obtained the title of sword hero at the Eastern Sage Sub-Palace. 1 year. It was only a difference of 1 year. Not being able to become a sword hero was a heavy blow to Funlai. Now, facing the pressure of an Origin Realm expert, Funlai chose to resist instead of submitting. He was unwilling to submit just like that. His entire body was trembling, and even his bones were letting out creaking sounds. Similar to Funlai, Chu Mu was also resisting. He ran further away, so the pressure he was enduring was obviously not as much as Fun Lai. However, Chu Mu's cultivation was also far inferior to Fun Lai's. Thus, Chu Mu's current suffering was not any less than Fun Lai's. It was as if the collapse of the heavens and the earth was about to crush him into mincemeat. This kind of terror caused his bones to let out creaking sounds. If it wasn't for the fact that his bones had been tempered by the desolation transformation, Chu Mu's bones and internal organs would have been injured under this kind of terrifying pressure. If he were to look within himself, Chu Mu would definitely be able to see that there were clear marks on his internal organs, bones, and meridians. They looked like cracks, but they weren't. These were the marks left behind after the desolation transformation. They would normally disappear and would only appear when there was an incomparably huge pressure. Even if it's a real landslide, don't even think of making me submit. Chu Mu roared in his heart. He continued to gather all the energy in his body. His essence, energy, and spirit were all condensed into one. His entire body's aura was incomparably sharp, as if it had turned into a sword pointing towards the heavens, unyielding, unforgiving, and would rather break than bend. Desheng's peak sword force burst forth and pointed towards the heavens, as if it wanted to pierce through the heavens. The aura of several Yuan realm experts poured down, continuously, like a huge waterfall. Chu Mu straightened his back bit by bit, and the sword force seemed to have become even stronger. Desheng's peak sword force was the limit that Chu Mu could reach at the moment. If he wanted to break through to the perfection stage, he would have to break through to the Qi High realm. Breaking through from the Qi transformation realm to the Qi High realm was not only an increase in strength, it was also an indirect transformation, a transformation of life. Thus, no matter how much he improved, Chu Mu's sword force would not be able to break through to the perfection stage. Once it broke through to the perfection stage, it would mean that he would be injured, an injury that could not be healed. At this moment, Chu Mu's sword force was like a sword embryo, and the aura of several Yuan realm experts were like a blazing hammer. This blazing hammer hammered on the sword embryo again and again, and every time it hammered on the sword embryo, the impurities in the sword embryo would be removed bit by bit, causing the sword embryo to become even harder and more resilient, moving towards the embryonic form of a treasured sword. Other than Chu Mu, Blood Sword Fun Lai also benefited from the confrontation, but he was also injured. After all, Fun Lai was not Chu Mu. He did not have the desolate sky, sword physique to withstand such a huge pressure. Suddenly, a cry of surprise rang out. Immediately after, the terrifying aura weakened a lot, reaching a level that both Fun Lai and Chu Mu could withstand. In an instant after losing the huge pressure, Chu Mu and Fun Lai's aura suddenly soared to the sky, as if two sword chis were shattering the void. That must be the so-called blood sword. Not bad indeed. Who's the other little guy? Normally, swordsmen who could cultivate to the Yuan realm were not young. There were at least 50 or 60 years old, and there were even some who were over 100 years old. It was normal to call a swordsman like Chu Mu, who was not even 20 years old, a little guy. I don't know what kind of power he is from, but he must have an extraordinary background. After the few Yuan realm swordsmen in the sky casually spoke a few words, they turned around and flew towards the cave, disappearing with a swoosh. As the Yuan realm swordsmen disappeared, the terrifying aura that enveloped a radius of 10 miles also disappeared. Immediately after, the turbulent storm also rapidly weakened. In the end, it merged with the mountain wind and blew past, causing the leaves to rustle. Looks like that cave is indeed not ordinary. It even made Yuan realm experts take action. There must be a peerless treasure inside. Chu Mu stared at the empty sky, his heart still lingering in the shock from before. Soon after, with a flash, Chu Mu turned into a stream of light and quickly left. His speed was even faster than before. Just as Blood Sword Fun Lai was about to chase after Chu Mu again, his body moved and he staggered, almost falling forward. He was not Chumu. Although his sword aura had been sharpened in the confrontation just now, his internal organs and bones had more or less suffered some injuries. Funlai's eyes were filled with a bloody light as he stared in the direction Chumu went, as if he was in deep thought. "I'll let you live a little longer," Funlai said to himself. At this moment, it was possible for him to continue chasing after Yishuin. He was confident that he could catch up and kill Yishuin, but that would only worsen his injuries. Moreover, fighting against the aura of several Yuan realm swordsmen was a rare experience. If he did not take advantage of this opportunity to comprehend it, it would be a waste if he missed it. Think about it. Yuan realm swordsmen were all high and mighty experts. They usually lived in seclusion and rarely came out. Moreover, even if they did, they might not release their aura to help you refine your sword aura. Why would they? Moreover, there were several Yuan realm experts just now. Every one of them had a different aura. When they mixed together, they did not specifically target him. It was just enough to push him to his limit without exceeding it by much. It was a very suitable way to refine his sword aura. After recovering slightly, Funlai turned into a stream of bloody light and disappeared. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chijian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 400. Numerous Origin Realm warriors appeared and entered the cave one after another. Chumu had no idea what would happen in the end. With a swoosh, a moon-white shadow dashed across the rugged mountain rocks like a flash of lightning. Then, a huge shadow dashed towards Yichin. A loud roar rang out, and the sound waves rolled out like thunder. When they landed on the ground trembled, and the rocks on the mountain were shattered and sent flying. This was a demonic beast that looked like both a lion and a tiger. Its skin was fiery red with streaks of golden stripes. The mane on its neck was also fiery red. As this huge demonic beast dashed forward, it looked like a raging fire was burning around it. The raging liger beast was born with the strength of a mid-level, low-level demonic beast. During its growth period, it could reach the mid-level. Once it reached adulthood, it would have the strength of a mid-level, high-level demonic beast. As time passed, it would become more and more powerful. This raging liger beast, which was even bigger than a bull, had the strength of a mid-level, super-level demonic beast. It was equivalent to a human swordsman at the peak of the Chi-Hai realm. It was extremely powerful. The raging liger beast had a terrifying physical strength. Its blood and chi vibrated and spread out, causing people to tremble in fear. Its demonic chi was rolling like a tsunami. Its huge eyes were also fiery red, shining like a flawless gem. It stared at the figure in front of it and locked onto Chumu. It would not give up until it was dead. This place was around 6,000 meters in the Chaoyao mountain. It was barely halfway up the mountain. There was not a single low-level demonic beast here, because low-level demonic beasts could not survive here. Even mid-level, low-level demonic beasts could not be seen. Most of them were mid-level, high-level demonic beasts. There were also quite a few mid-level, super-level demonic beasts. This time, it was because Chumu had killed a mid-level, high-level demonic beast with his dark red dagger. Coincidentally, he encountered this raging liger beast that was out hunting for food. The demonic aura was billowing, and the blood was terrifyingly dense. Just by relying on the strength of his muscles, he was able to cause the surrounding air to explode and shatter. With this kind of physical strength, even without using demonic aura, he could easily kill a sword artist at the beginning of the Sea of Chi realm or even a small success stage with a single claw. In addition to its terrifying demonic power, it was even more terrifying. Chumu immediately judged that he was not the opponent of this wild liger beast. Since he wasn't a match for it, of course he would turn around and run. Could it be that he would stupidly stay behind and fight to the death with this demonic beast? Needless to say, the one who would die in the end would definitely be him. The difference in strength between them was too great. Demon beasts were different from human swordsmen. The physique of demon beasts was very strong. For example, a mid-level demon beast's physique was so strong that it could even withstand the sharpness of a mid-level sword without being damaged. There were even some powerful mid-level demon beasts that couldn't even withstand the sharpness of a high-level sword. What was even more ridiculous was that even a top-level sword couldn't hurt them. Not only did they have such a strong defense, but most of the demon beast's physique was even more terrifying. The physique of a demon beast of the same level was at least 10 times or even 100 times that of a swordsman. Their teeth and claws were also very sharp and full of sharpness. They were not any weaker than a human sword and had a terrifying killing power. In addition to the strong demonic power in their bodies, overall, a demon beast of the same level was actually stronger than a human swordsman. This was the advantage of demon beasts. But their weakness was also very obvious, and that was their intelligence. Demon beasts' brains were always not very good. They acted based on their beastly instincts. Although it was said that the stronger the demon beast, the more intelligent it would be, but that was only relative to low-level demon beasts. Compared to humans, the intelligence of high-level demon beasts was not enough. In addition, humans practiced sword chi, swordsmanship, and had swords. In addition to their intelligence, these were the assets that human swordsmen had to fight against demon beasts. Even so, it still couldn't hide the strength of the demonic beast. Under normal circumstances, a low-rank demonic beast would be able to defeat 2 low-rank chi-high sword warriors. Of course, if it was a genius sword warrior, it would be a different story. If Chu Mu had the strength of a sword master, he would not be afraid of this wild liger beast, but he did not. Using his body movement skill to the extreme, his speed was unbelievably fast. He was as light as the wind and as sharp as gold. He cut through the air, minimizing the resistance and increasing his speed to the extreme. Chu Mu's speed was fast, but the wild liger beast chasing after him was not slow either. It was always a few dozen meters away from Chu Mu and did not fall behind at all. Instead, it was getting closer and closer to Chu Mu. Another roar was heard. The wild liger beast suddenly opened its mouth, and a ball of flame condensed in its mouth. In a flash, it turned into a ball of fire and shot it towards Chu Mu. This was not a natal beast skill. It was just a technique that was similar to the sword chi released by human swordsmen. However, the power was a few times stronger than the sword chi released by human swordsmen. The moment the violent lion-tiger beast opened its mouth, Chu Mu felt a scorching aura rush towards him. The surrounding air also became scorching hot, as if it was about to boil. Following that, a fireball the size of a human head shot out. Chu Mu felt as if his back was about to ignite. Without looking back, Chu Mu felt as if he could see a burning crimson fireball blasting towards him. The high temperature could instantly melt steel. His scalp was numb and his pores were opened. A strong sense of danger filled his whole body. Chu Mu's body stopped for a second. Then, all the muscles in his body started to tremble. The sword chi was 10 times faster than before. His whole body flew to the side like lightning. Boom! The ball of fire missed its target and hit a rock 10 meters away from him. Suddenly, the rock was blown into pieces. Dust and smoke were rolling in the air. Every piece of rock was burnt black, almost burning. Black smoke curled up into the air. The temperature was so high that it was like a bullet. That piece of rock that was several thousand pounds in weight had disappeared. Only the bottom part of the rock was burnt black, with wisps of black smoke coming out. After missing its target, the wild liger beast opened its mouth again. Another ball of fire appeared. Some demonic beasts only had physical strength and demonic power. However, some demonic beasts also had some special abilities, such as controlling fire or ice. Such demonic beasts were often more powerful and harder to deal with. This demonic beast is very powerful. I am not its opponent. Its speed is also very fast. It can even spit out fireballs. If I continue to chase after it like this, it will be very dangerous. Chu Mu dodged the attack of the fireball again. He thought quickly, "One attack, I only have one chance. If I miss, I will have to run for my life." After proving the sharp edge of the dark red dagger many times, Chu Mu was sure that the dagger could easily pierce through the body of the wild liger beast and suck its blood dry. However, Chu Mu was not sure if the wild liger beast would dodge or not. If there was a slight mistake, not only would the dagger fall, he would also have to run for his life. There was only one chance. Turning around to face the wild liger beast, Chu Mu stared at the mouth of the wild liger beast. Although his speed was reduced and the wild liger beast would keep catching up with him, it opened its mouth again. Another ball of fire condensed in its mouth and was spat out. The whole process was clearly presented in front of Chu Mu's eyes. Chu Mu hurriedly performed his body movement to avoid it. He was slightly affected. Fortunately, the protective sword Qi blocked the aftershock, so he was not hurt. After doing this 3 times, a smile appeared on Chu Mu's face. Although he was in a bit of a difficult situation, he had found the best opportunity to attack. In a flash, the wild liger beast was only 30 meters away from Chu Mu. It opened its mouth again. Another ball of fire condensed in its mouth and was spat out in a flash. Chu Mu's eyelids suddenly lifted. His pupils shrank like needles, and his eyes were as sharp as swords. The dark red dagger appeared in his left hand. He poured the Tianyuan sword Qi and the ripping mentality into it. He waved his left hand forward. With a swoosh, the dark red lightning tore through the sky and shot towards the fireball. The fireball was very powerful, but the dark red dagger was even more powerful. It instantly pierced through the fireball and shot towards the wild liger beast's mouth that was about to close. The wild liger beast's gem-like eyes suddenly widened, but it could not dodge. The dark red light directly shot into its mouth and went straight into its body. Then the berserk liger beast trembled and let out an earth-shattering roar. Its 4 sharp claws fiercely stomped on the ground, scratching here and there. It was incomparably painful, and its skin could be seen spasming and twitching. The wild liger beast was enduring the pain of having its blood absorbed. It even roared and rushed towards Chu Mu, as if it wanted to die together with Chu Mu. A trapped beast would still fight. An injured beast was the most terrifying. This berserk liger beast was an existence that was thousands of times more terrifying than a wild beast. Once it went berserk, the surrounding rocks all suffered a calamity. Pieces of rocks were shattered under its sharp claws, splitting into pieces. Chu Mu's figure was like a willow leaf fluttering in the wind, causing the violent lion-tiger beast's sharp claws to miss again and again. He couldn't help but exclaim in his heart that the life force of a middle-class, super-stage demon beast was terrifyingly tenacious. Once a mid-level, high-level demon beast was pierced by the dark red dagger, it could only hold on for 30 to 40 breaths of time before it turned into a pile of bones. This wild liger beast had already gone berserk for 60 breaths of time. Chu Mu felt that it began to weaken, and its full and strong body began to dry up little by little. After another 20 breaths of time, the wild liger beast finally stopped moving. Its shriveled body fell into a pile of broken rocks, and it was completely dead. Under the shriveled belly of the wild liger beast, a faint red light was faintly discernible, attracting Chu Mu's eyes. Chu Mu was startled, and then revealed a touch of joy. His figure appeared beside the corpse of the wild liger beast, like the wind. He unsheathed the rapid sky sword and cut open the shriveled belly of the demon beast. Suddenly, a dagger releasing a faint scarlet light flew up and fell into Chu Mu's hand. Like an unstable light bulb, the scarlet light on the dagger flickered. Chu Mu's eyes were filled with joy, and his heart was extremely excited. How could he not be excited? After so long, killing so many demon beasts and putting himself in danger several times, was the secret of this dagger about to appear? To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chijian. come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 401. It was already late at night. The sky was filled with stars, but the moon was nowhere to be seen. Over 6,000 meters above sea level on the Chaoyao Mountain, gusts of mountain wind blew in from afar. They whistled and rustled as they blew past the leaves, adding a unique charm to the dark night. Because of the high altitude and the night, the wind was very cold. It was enough to freeze an ordinary person to death. Even Chu-Mu had no choice but to use his protective sword chi to isolate himself from the mountain wind. Popping sounds could be heard as the bonfire in front of Chu-Mu burned fiercely. Sparks flew from the burning wood, and wisps of green smoke rose in spirals. When the mountain wind blew, they immediately dissipated without a trace. The flames were high and low, roasting the demonic beast meat. Golden oil dripped down and sizzled as it was roasted by the flames. Bursts of rich meat fragrance were carried away by the wind. In the distance, the occasional roar of a demonic beast could be heard, but it quickly quieted down. Chu-Mu didn't pay attention to the demonic beast meat being roasted. Instead, he focused on the dark red dagger in his hand. Compared to the day, the dark red dagger no longer emitted any light. It was still the same dark red color as before. It didn't seem to have changed at all. However, Chu-Mu felt that the aura of the dagger had changed. It was different from before. However, Chu-Mu couldn't tell what exactly was different. He vaguely felt that if the dagger before was an inanimate object, then the dagger now had a trace of spirituality. It was as if it was alive. Sometimes, Chu-Mu even felt that there was a life living inside the dagger. However, this kind of thought was too inconceivable. This was the first change to the dagger. The second change was that the two characters on the dagger had become very clear. Unfortunately, these were very ancient characters. Chu-Mu didn't recognize them. He didn't know what they meant. Although he didn't recognize them, Chu-Mu already knew what they meant. Azura. The reason he knew this was because the red light from the dark red sword had entered Chu-Mu's mind and evolved into two pieces of information. This allowed Chu-Mu to know what this dark red sword was. The first part of the message was that this thing came from the central main sword domain. It was something similar to a sword token from a sect. This sect was called the Shura Sword Sect. As for what kind of sect it was, the small sword's message did not clearly state. It only stated that if one brought this small sword to the Shura Sword Sect, they would be able to enter the Shura Sword Sect and become a sword sect disciple. This wasn't very attractive to Chu-Mu. He just felt very surprised. The content of the second message was even shorter, but it set off a storm in Chu-Mu's heart. The Azura Sword Sect was a sword Dao sect. If one entered the Azura Sword Sect as a disciple, they would have the opportunity to obtain the Azura Sword Dao inheritance. Sword Dao inheritance. So far, Chu-Mu had only met less than 10 swordsmen who had inherited the way of the sword. Perhaps there were more, but he didn't know. However, only 2 of them had actually fought against each other. Xiao Qianfeng had inherited the boundless Sword Dao. Ying Jenny had inherited the 7 Slaughter Sword Dao. Within the great Kuin sword mansion, Chu-Mu was sure that there were others who had also obtained the way of the Sword Dao inheritance. It was just that he didn't know who they were. There were simply too few swordsmen who could obtain the way of the Sword Dao inheritance. There might not even be one in 100,000 swordsmen. Similarly, once a swordsman obtained the way of the Sword Dao inheritance, their future would be limitless. Their strength would also be much stronger than other swordsmen of the same level. Chu-Mu, who had fought against Xiao Qianfeng and Ying Jinni, also yearned for the so-called way of the Sword Dao inheritance. However, according to the records of the Sword Dao inheritors in the Eastern Sword Domain, most of them had gone out to train and obtained some sort of fortuitous encounter. Now, Chu-Mu knew that there was actually a Sword Dao sect in the Central Main Sword Domain that could give its disciples the opportunity to obtain the way of the Sword Dao inheritance. Chu Mu was sure that within the Shura sword sect, there were definitely more than one or two swordsmen who had obtained the way of the sword Dao inheritance. This small sword was a great opportunity, but at the same time it was also a hot potato. Once others knew that he had such an item, even Origin Realm swordsmen would attack him. To countless swordsmen, the Central Main Sword Domain was the birthplace of swordsmen. It was the holy land of swordsmen. A sword Dao sect that was called a way of the sword Dao sect was definitely very powerful. It might even surpass existences like the Great Kuin Sword Palace. If he could join it and strive to obtain the way of the Shura sword Dao inheritance, wouldn't he soar to the heavens? One had to know that many Origin Realm swordsmen opened their eyes wide, hoping that a pie would fall from the sky and obtain the way of the sword Dao inheritance. Chu Mu felt a surge of excitement in his heart. Right now, he would leave the Great Kuin dynasty, leave the Eastern Sword Domain, and head to the Central Main Sword Domain. He would join the Shura Sword sect and strive to obtain the way of the Shura Sword Dao inheritance. The excitement in his heart was quickly suppressed by Chu Mu. In a short period of time, he regained his composure. Even Origin Realm swordsmen would be amazed by his mental fortitude. The journey to the Central Main Sword Domain was more than 10,000 miles. There were countless dangers along the way that could easily take one's life. With his mere Qi transformation realm cultivation, wanting to head to the Central Main Sword Domain was no different from a fantasy. Even Qi high swordsmen wouldn't dare to do so. Perhaps only those with the strength of a sword grandmaster would be able to give it a try. Sword grandmaster. Chu Mu's eyes suddenly emitted an intense light. There seemed to be golden flames burning in his pupils. He was filled with an indomitable will to fight. His aura was extremely impassioned. The aura he emitted actually caused the flames in front of him to burn even more fiercely. With a flip of his hand, the dark red, small sword disappeared. Chu Mu began to enjoy the delicious barbecued meat. In the Chaoyao Mountain, a moon-white figure flew past. That figure was as light as a feather. It was light and elegant. Its speed was also very fast. It flashed past like a bolt of lightning, leaving behind a faint white trace in the air. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace. What was shocking was that this moon-white figure was constantly flying forward. However, it seemed to stop at the same spot for a moment. It gave people the illusion that the moon-white figure wasn't moving forward at all. Instead, it seemed to be walking on the same spot. It was very strange. In reality, the figure was moving forward at a speed as fast as the wind. Everything was just a visual illusion. With a flash, the moon-white figure floated down like a feather. It was also like an arrow that shot out. It suddenly stopped and landed on a protruding rock a few meters high. Only its long black hair danced in the wind. Its moon-white robe also fluttered in the wind. This person was Chu Mu. His eyes became deep and distant as he looked into the distance. The endless mountain forest stretched for tens of thousands of miles until it seemed to connect with the sky. The endless white clouds fluttered and changed unpredictably. Everything was reflected in his eyes. This is a footwork that combines the essence of the flashing wind movement technique, the wandering in the wind movement technique, and the phantom steps. I'll name it the flying swan illusory steps. Chu Mu said neither slowly nor quickly. It was as if he was talking to himself. His voice was so soft that only he could hear it. Back then, when he encountered the blood sword Funlai in the cave, after Chu Mu dodged Funlai's first attack, in a moment of desperation, his potential suddenly erupted. In a situation where even Chu Mu himself could not grasp it, he used the flashing wind movement technique, the wandering in the wind movement technique, and the phantom steps at the same time. It was indeed possible to use some different movement techniques at the same time, but the difficulty was very high. One had to completely grasp the essence of two different movement techniques in order to have a chance. There were even some different movement techniques that were basically opposites. If one wanted to use them at the same time, Even if one had grasped the essence, it would not be possible. If one tried to forcefully fuse them, they might even hurt themselves. Normally, using two movement techniques and one movement technique at the same time was something that one did not even dare to think about. Only when one's life was in danger and there was only one thought left in one's heart would one's potential suddenly erupt. Only then would one be able to accomplish something that could be said to be impossible. With the first time with Chumu's memory, he would naturally remember the feeling at that time. Then, relying on his monstrous perception, he would slowly trace it back to its roots and thoroughly understand its mysteries. From there, he would truly reach the point where the essence of two movement techniques and one movement technique could be fused together. This was a difficult process. Without a doubt, Chumu had crossed it and done it. The wandering in the wind movement technique was originally created by Chumu, so it was very easy to grasp its essence. The flashing wind movement technique was originally a high-level movement technique, but after being thoroughly understood by Chumu, it evolved into a super-level movement technique. The phantom steps was originally a high-level movement technique, but after evolving into a super-level movement technique, its essence was grasped by Chumu. All of these things had established the possibility of today. The Flying Swan Illusory Steps was a brand new movement technique created by Chumu after fusing the essence of two movement techniques and one movement technique together with the concept of clouds. Not only did it have the lightness and elegance of the wandering in the wind movement technique, but it also had the speed of the flashing wind movement technique, the illusion of the phantom steps, and the unpredictability of the concept of clouds. With all of these characteristics combined, it created the miraculous mysteries of the Flying Swan Illusory Steps. Although this was the first time Chumu had used the Flying Swan Illusory Steps, this movement technique was based on the wandering in the wind movement technique, the flashing wind movement technique, the phantom steps, and the concept of clouds. Chumu easily grasped it and used it skillfully, as if he had practiced it for many years. This Flying Swan Illusory Steps can currently be divided into 3 levels. Chumu carried the void sword on his back and looked into the distance with his hands behind his back. He muttered to himself, "The first level is to display the essence of 2 movement techniques and 1 movement technique from before. They complement each other and give people the illusion that they are not moving. At this level, I can be considered to have just started and have a basic grasp of it. I still need more time to completely master it. The second level should be to give people the illusion that they are advancing and retreating. It shouldn't be too difficult to master this level. As for the third level, that is where the real difficulty lies. Currently, I am only stuck at the setting." As soon as Chumu's voice left his mouth, it was instantly blown away by the mountain wind and disappeared without a trace in the forest. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chijin. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 402. A group of people wearing long black robes came from afar and arrived at the demon-shaking city. None of them seemed to be old, the oldest of them being around 30 years old. The group of people gathered information as soon as they arrived at the demon-shaking city. Then they left the city and entered the demon-shaking plains in groups. The moon-white shadow was extremely light as a feather, but also as fast as the wind. When it moved, it gave people the feeling that it was not moving at all, as if it had the power to transform. The 3 black-robed sword artists opened their eyes wide as if they had seen a ghost. Then a cold light suddenly appeared beside them and turned into 3 stars. It was like a flower blooming. 3 blood-red flowers bloomed on the throats of the 3 black-robed sword artists. The 3 black-robed figures still had their eyes wide open as their bodies fell forward. Their movements were synchronized, as if they had rehearsed it before. The power of the Flying Swan Illusory Steps is indeed extraordinary. The air-speed sword drew out a sword flower, and blood splashed in the air. Putting the sword back into its scabbard, Chu glanced at the 3 dead bodies in front of him and said softly, "These 3 black-robed sword artists all had the sword chi of the beginning chi-high realm. If it was before, Chu could definitely kill them one-on-one, but it would not be that fast, not to mention 1-on-3. Now, Chu could do it. On one hand, it was because his power had increased, and on the other hand, it was because of the flying swan illusory steps. Chu didn't know how to define this footwork technique's rank, because footwork techniques were only defined up to the super rank. After the super rank, there was no definition. It wasn't that he didn't want to define it, but that there were very few footwork techniques after the super rank. The flying swan illusory steps was supported by 70% of the poetic perspective of one cloud. Especially after Chu had mastered the first level, it was even more mysterious and unpredictable. The 3 beginning chi-high realm sword artists could not react in time. His movements were fast and practiced. Chu found some soul stones from the bodies of the 3 beginning chi-high realm sword artists. He did not even let go of their top-rank swords. These 3 swordsmen were all disciples of the Mora sword sect. Up to now, 4 core disciples of the Mora sword sect had died at the hands of Chu. From what the 3 core disciples of the Mora sword sect said, Chu learned that his ranking on the Mora sword sect's core mission board had risen again, and so had his bounty. Many of the Mora sword sect's core disciples were tempted to accept the mission and come to Demon Shaker City. Furthermore, they also knew that Chu was an inner palace disciple of the great Kuin sword mansion. This made the core disciples of the Mora sword sect want to kill him even more. Chu was not surprised that his identity was exposed. After all, the Mora sword sect was a powerful sect that could rival the great Kuin sword palace. Their intelligence network was naturally not weak. It was natural that they would be able to find out his identity. 2 Dashang Chi High Warriors, 8 Low Chi High Warriors, and 15 Early Chi High Warriors. The Mora sword sect, what a powerful group. Chu looked away from the 3 corpses below him and looked into the distance. His eyes became deep as he muttered to himself. His tone was filled with sadness, and then killing intent. His eyes were shining like gems, and a sharp light was swirling in them. His killing intent was overflowing, and it shot up into the sky. 3, there are still 22 left. Just wait for me to come and take your lives. His body moved again, and he turned into a swan in the sky, flying away like a wind. A sharp sound was heard, and it sounded like a long siren. A red light shot up into the sky and stopped a few hundred meters away. The sharp sound also stopped. Then the fist-sized red light exploded and turned into hundreds of red light spots, shooting out in all directions like shooting stars. They were shining brightly for dozens of meters. At that moment, it was like a huge, blooming firework. It was like the sun shining down on the earth. Even if one was 10,000 meters away, they could still see it clearly. This was a signal flare. It was a way for the disciples of the Mora sword sect to notify the other disciples of the sect. Chu, you won't be able to escape. 9 Chi-high realm beginner swordsmen formed a circle and surrounded Chu. If it was 1 against 3, Chu was confident that he could kill them all in an instant, just like before. But 1 against 9, Chu was not confident. Therefore, he was thinking quickly. But these guys only formed a circle and surrounded him without attacking. Instead, they sent out a signal flare to summon the other disciples of the Mora sword sect. They wanted to kill him as soon as possible. Glancing at them, Chu immediately used his flying swan illusionary steps. His body lightly dashed to the side. In the eyes of the 9 Chi-high realm sword artists, his body seemed to have not moved at all. He stayed in the same spot, but he seemed to have moved again. He was extremely fast and light, and his movements were unpredictable. All in all, it was a contradiction. It looked very contradictory, and it made them feel uncomfortable. Their eyes were filled with confusion. Then, thousands of broken light spots appeared in front of them. The broken light spots were everywhere, making them feel like they were in a river of stars. In the next moment, the thousands of broken light spots started to flow like water. In the blink of an eye, they sped up and formed a circle. It was like the Milky Way was reversing. The eyes of the 9mo Luo sword sect Chi high warriors became even more confused. Their eyes reflected the countless broken stars. These stars were still spinning around, as if they were trapped within them. They couldn't tell which direction was north or south, and they were lost in it. Suddenly, among the thousands of broken light spots, 9 of them emitted a sharp light. The light spots were extremely bright. They were like 9 swords piercing towards the throats of the 9 Chi high warriors. Each of the swords had a clear trajectory. It looked like a straight line, but in reality, it contained the power of thousands of changes. It was as if the swords would disappear in a second and turn into other light spots, making it hard for people to dodge. With a swooshing sound, the 9 sword-like, bright starlight pierced into the throats of the 9 Chi high realm warriors. In the next moment, the starlight in the sky disappeared. A gust of wind blew past, and the 9 warriors fell back onto the ground in unison. On each of their throats, there was a blooming flower of blood. Their eyes were filled with confusion. Even when they died, they did not know how they were killed. Chu Mu's face was pale. It was not because he had killed someone, but because he had used up too much of his sword chi. At that moment, he had concentrated all his chi and performed the first move of the Broken Star sword art, Broken Star Shine, and the second move, Broken Star Spin. After a few months, Chu Mu had finally mastered the first move of the Broken Star sword art, Broken Star Shine, to the level of Deshang. After that, Deshang started to practice the second move, Broken Star Spin. Shattering Star Spin was even more mysterious than Shattering Star Brilliance, so it was naturally more difficult to train. If it weren't for the fact that the Shattering Star sword art's 3 great sword techniques were all linked together, and that the second technique used the first technique as a foundation, Chu Mu would probably have to spend several times more time to learn it. Even so, Chu Mu had only barely reached the small success stage of Broken Star Brilliance, fighting 1 against 9. Even if he used guerrilla tactics, it would still take him a long time to kill them all. During this time, the other Chi high swordsmen from the Mo Luo sword sect would arrive and he would be in danger. Therefore, Chu Mu decided to use the most decisive and ruthless method. He used the power of wind and thunder to sweep through the area and kill these 9 beginner Chi high realm sword artists in the shortest amount of time. This way, he would have some time to recover and prepare for the next battle. The path of a swordsman was filled with life and death. In an instant, Chu Mu used Flying Swan illusory steps and then used Shattering Star Brilliance and Shattering Star Spin. Moreover, he displayed 120% of the power of these 2 great sword techniques. This consumed an incomparably large amount of his mental energy and sword aura. After killing 9 people in one go, Chu Mu also became weak for a short while. Although he was weak, Chu Mu did not fall down. He stood straight with the Speed Sky sword in his hand. His whole body was straight like a sharp sword piercing into the sky. He kept on using the 9 transformations of heaven to recover his sword chi. The surrounding Ling chi quickly gathered from afar and turned into gusts of wind. With Chu Mu as the center, the Ling chi quickly poured into Chu Mu's body. After the Ling chi entered his meridians, it started to move quickly along the 9 transformations of heaven. After the Desolation transformation, the meridians were very strong. Even if the sword chi of heaven was moving at 10 times the speed, it would still be able to move. Chu Mu kept on moving the sword chi of heaven, causing it to move faster and faster. Like hundreds of rivers flowing into the sea, countless Ling Chi rushed into Chu Mu's pores and into his meridians. The Ling Chi continued to move at a high speed along with the sword Chi of heaven. The Ling Chi in the Chaoyao mountain was very rich. At the same time, the Yao Chi was also very rich. When Chu Mu absorbed the Ling Chi into his body, a part of the Yao Chi also entered his meridians. This was what most of the swordsmen were worried about. As everyone knew, the Ling Qi was gentle. The Yao Qi was very violent because of its demonic power. Furthermore, the Yao Qi and Ling Qi were incompatible. Once they entered the meridians of a swordsman, the violent Yao Qi would clash with the swordsman's sword Qi. This conflict also began to manifest in Chu Mu's meridians. Fortunately, there wasn't enough demonic aura, and it was easily dispersed by Chu Mu's heavenly Yuan sword Qi. Adding on the fact that Chu Mu's meridians were incomparably tough, the collision between demonic aura and heavenly Yuan sword Qi was unable to damage Chu Mu's meridians. On the contrary, when the sword Qi and the Yao Qi collided, the Yao Qi was like a fiery hammer, and the sword Qi was like a sword embryo. Every collision was like a fiery hammer hitting the sword embryo. Chu Mu could feel that the sword Qi of heaven was becoming pure at a speed that he could feel. Chu Mu forgot about the outside world and immersed himself in it. The feeling of constantly recovering and purifying his sword Qi was exhilarating and incomparable. He only had one thought in his mind, and that was to purify his sword Qi to the point of breaking through the 9th transformation of heaven origin. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 403. Junior Apprentice Brother. These were the core disciples of the Mo Luo sword sect who had rushed over when they saw the signal flare. When they saw the 9 corpses with their heads facing outwards and their feet facing inwards, they were all furious. These 9 corpses were not related to them by blood. In the Mo Luo sword sect, they could be considered as competitors. But this time they had formed a team and came to the Yao Yao city to complete a mission, which was to capture Chu Mu, an inner house disciple of the great Kuan sword palace. Therefore, they were now on the same side and had a common enemy. Not to mention, their apprentice brothers had died in the hands of an outsider, who was the target of their mission. This made them even more furious. How dare you stay here after killing someone? Kill him and avenge our apprentice brothers. A Qi high warrior shouted angrily. He pulled out his sword and was about to kill Chu Mu on the spot. Stop! One of the 2 Qi high warriors of the Deshang sword sect immediately pulled out his sword and blocked the attack. Senior apprentice brother, this is one of our apprentice brothers, the Qi high warrior said with a face full of grief. Yes, he is one of our apprentice brothers. But don't forget, our goal is to complete the mission. The Qi high warrior of the Deshang sword sect said coldly. The other Qi high warrior of the Deshang sword sect also nodded in agreement and added, the reward for killing Chu Mu and capturing Chu Mu is 3 times the reward. 3 times, the other core disciples of the Mo Luo sword sect suddenly became silent. That's right. Their goal was to complete the mission and get the reward. After completing the mission, the rewards they received would be distributed according to the previously agreed upon ratio. The greater the final reward, the greater the reward each of them would receive. Taking a step back and thinking about it, the more people who died, the more rewards they would receive in the end. Thinking of this, the grief and indignation in his heart dissipated like smoke. Senior brother, this guy was able to kill 9 of our junior brothers. His strength is not normal. He is much stronger than we thought. The Lo Qi Hai sword warrior put his sword back into its scabbard and stared at Chu Mu. He frowned and said, he is indeed extraordinarily powerful. However, the current him does not have the slightest ability to resist. This is the best opportunity to attack him. As soon as he finished speaking, the core disciples of the Moro sword sect all rushed toward Chu Mu. In the blink of an eye, they had crossed tens of meters and were closing in on Chu Mu. In the next moment, Chu Mu would fall into their hands. His dantian would be sealed and he would be completely powerless to resist. In the end, he would be brought back to the Moro sword sect and become their mission subject. Suddenly, Chu Mu opened his eyes. 2 beams of cold light shot out like 2 sharp swords towards the crowd. At that moment, The 2 low chi high sword warriors, the 8 low chi high sword warriors, and the 3 low chi high sword warriors felt their hearts skip a beat. Then a powerful sword aura shot out from Chumu's body and soared into the sky. In their eyes, Chumu's body seemed to have expanded by 10 times. He was like a huge sword pointing towards the sky, releasing an endless amount of sharpness. This was the peak of Deshang's sword aura. It was released without Chumu's control and turned into a sharp sword that looked like it was going to pierce through the sky. This was the peak of Deshang's sword aura. After being polished by the aura of the previous Origin Realm warriors, it had become even sharper and smoother. It seemed like it was going to break through Deshang's sword aura and reach completion. None of the Chi High sword warriors present had this kind of sword aura, but today it appeared on a peak Chi transforming realm sword warrior. How could they not be shocked? All of a sudden, they all had the same thought. This person had to kill someone, or else there would be endless trouble. Chumu suddenly soared into the sky. The sword aura wings on his back opened up and flapped. He turned into a white light and flew down the disorderly demon mountain. Then, the sword aura wings became even thinner and longer. They were like sharp blades as they vibrated at a high speed. With one vibration, Chumu's speed increased by a few times. Like a flash of white lightning, he traveled thousands of meters in an instant. The second level of the sky traversing secret art, soaring to the sky. At that moment, Chumu performed soaring to the sky 3 times in a row. There was not much sword aura left in his dantian. He also used the soaring to the sky secret art to appear more than 10,000 meters away, leaving the core disciples of the Moro sword sect far behind. In just a moment, Chumu disappeared in front of their eyes. How unbelievable was that? Chumu was secretly glad. With his strength, he was not a match for these people. If he fought, only death would await him. Therefore, he had to use some tricks. At that time, he finally broke through to the 9th transformation of the 9 transformations of heaven. Just like what was written in the 9 transformations of heaven, once he reached the 9th transformation, the quantity and purity of his sword aura would increase by 50%. In other words, right now, Chumu's sword aura quantity and purity was no less than a normal Chi-High realm sword artist. It might even be better than him. In terms of strength, Chumu could easily kill a normal Chi-High realm sword artist, but he was still not a match for these people. Therefore, when they attacked, Chumu released the peak of Deshang's sword aura, which shocked these sword artists. No matter if it was the shock or the shock from the sword aura, it would cause them to stop for a moment. This pause was the perfect time for Chumu to escape. Chase after him. I'd rather bring his corpse back than let him escape. 2 Deshang realm sword artists shouted together. They were full of killing intent. They immediately used their flying secret arts and opened their sword aura wings, chasing after Yi Qin. Chase! The other Chi High Realm sword artists also shouted. Their killing intent increased as they opened their sword aura wings and chased after Yi Qin. This kind of person would definitely be able to become a sword master in the future. He could not be left alive, or else he would be a huge threat. After rushing out for 10,000 meters, Chumu landed on the ground and retracted his sword aura wings. It's time to break through, Chumu said softly. His voice was carried away by the wind in the forest. He slowly closed his eyes. At the same time, the 13 core disciples of the Mo Luo sword sect had also caught up. They were only a few thousand meters away from Chumu. This kind of distance could be covered in 10 breaths. All of a sudden, the Ling Qi in the surroundings seemed to be boiling. The Yao Qi and the Ling Qi were in turmoil. There was a strong wind blowing from all directions, forming gusts of wind. From left to right, from right to left, the gusts of wind collided with each other and exploded, forming a cyclone. The clouds in the sky seemed to be affected as well. They were moving faster and faster, as if they were being stirred up by an invisible hand. The wind was blowing and the clouds were moving. The wind became even more violent, causing the trees in the mountains to rustle. The fist-sized rocks were also rolling around, as if they were being swept up by the storm. This is the core disciples of the Mo Luo sword sect, who were less than 1,000 meters away from Chumu, all had a change in expression. Kill him now, we cannot let him break through. They were all experienced and knowledgeable. They immediately recognized that Chumu was in the middle of breaking through. Breaking through what? Breaking through to the Qi High realm. Chumu, who was at the peak of the Qi transforming realm, was already hard for them to deal with. If he broke through to the Qi High realm, then his power would increase exponentially and he would be even harder to deal with. At that time, they would not be able to do anything to him. Now that he has just broken through and has not formed his Qi Si, let's kill him now. All of a sudden, the 13 Qi High realm warriors attacked with all of their strength. They gathered all of the Qi around them into one sword and shot out 13 different colored but extremely bright sword lights. Each sword light was at least 10 meters long. Some even reached 20 meters. They were like meteorites falling from the sky, shooting towards Chumu. The distance was too far. If they used their ancient sword arts, they would not be able to make it in time. Without any other choice, the 13 core disciples of the Mo Luo sword sect had to use most of their sword Qi and poetic realm to gather all of the Qi around them to attack Chumu. The 13 huge sword lights shot towards Yi Qin like lightning. They were filled with killing intent and directly shattered many of the Qi cyclones. Within 3 breaths, the 13 huge sword lights would definitely travel hundreds of meters and hit Chumu, killing Chumu completely. However, Chumu did not seem to feel anything, or he was not worried at all. He closed his eyes and spread out his consciousness to touch the Qi around him, the world outside his body, and the heaven and earth around him. The 13 core disciples of the Mo Luo sword sect all stared at the 13 sword lights. They were extremely nervous. They hoped that the 13 sword lights would be able to kill Chumu in one hit. Otherwise, when they reached Chumu and were about to attack, they would lose the best chance to attack. Sharp and terrifying sounds of wind splitting rang out incessantly, causing one's scalp to go numb. Although the 13 terrifying sword rays had their power reduced by more than half due to traversing a few hundred meters, once they hit Chumu, they were still able to instantly break through Chumu's protective sword aura. Even the feather-patterned armor on his body couldn't block them. The 13 sword lights were less than 50 meters away from Chumu. In the blink of an eye, the 13 sword lights would definitely hit Chumu. In the blink of an eye, the spirit aura and demonic aura around Chumu's body began to revolve. Streaks of air turned gray and were clearly visible. They were like streams of water that wrapped around Chumu. Circle after circle, they surrounded Chumu. The 13 sword lights slashed at the rapidly spinning, grayish-white streams of Qi. The streams of Qi paused for a moment before exploding under the attack of the sword lights. However, the Qi around the streams of Qi immediately replenished them, turning into a new grayish-white stream of Qi that once again wrapped around Chumu. The grayish-white stream of Qi seemed to be endless. Under the constant attack, the 13 sword lights shattered like they were crushed by a millstone. They were sucked into the grayish-white stream of Qi and became a part of it, wrapping around Chumu. Condensed Qi-like stream, protect yourself. The expressions of the 13 core disciples of the Mo Luo sword sect who had rushed over became extremely ugly. Their faces were so gloomy that it seemed like water was about to drip from them. Their eyes were filled with anger and hatred. A difference of one step. Just a difference of one step, and they lost the chance to kill Chumu on the spot. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 404. Condense the Qi like a stream. Protect yourself. This was the phrase that every sword practitioner would use when they break through to the Qi High realm. When a sword practitioner breaks through to the Qi transformation realm from the half-step Qi transformation realm, they need to communicate with the heavens and earth. To put it bluntly, it's not that mysterious. It's just communicating with the spirit Qi around your body and refining your body from the inside to the outside. From then on, you can absorb the spirit Qi outside your body to train and transform it into your own sword Qi. When a sword practitioner reaches this stage, their spirit Qi will become more vigorous, and to a certain extent, there will be a qualitative change. It's also not like a sword practitioner who needs to eat to maintain the strength of their body and train. Of course, if there's good food, no Qi transformation realm sword practitioner will refuse it. Qi transformation is to transform the spirit Qi outside your body into your own sword Qi. This is the essence of the Qi transformation realm. The Qi high realm and the Qi transformation realm have some similarities, but also some differences. For sword practitioners, the Qi high realm is the realm after the Qi transformation realm. It's a realm higher than the Qi transformation realm. It can be said that the Qi high realm is a development of the Qi transformation realm. For the same reason, the Qi high realm is the same as the Qi transformation realm. It can even be said that it's an extension of the Qi transformation realm. It's like going from a low level to a high level. The Qi high realm's ability to absorb spirit Qi far surpasses the Qi transformation realm. For example, when a sword practitioner breaks through to the Qi transformation realm, they can create a spirit Qi whirlpool that's 50 or 100 meters wide. When they break through to the Qi high realm, they will also create a spirit Qi whirlpool, but the range will be 10 times larger, reaching 500 or 1,000 meters. Think about it. A spirit Qi whirlpool that's at least a few hundred meters wide will contain 10 times more spirit Qi than when breaking through to the Qi transformation realm. It's so dense that it can be seen with the naked eye. From afar, it's like a sea of spirit Qi, a sea of spirit Qi that's many times smaller. That's how the Qi high realm got its name. Not only that, after breaking through to the Qi high realm, one would gain the ability to manipulate the Ling Qi outside their body to attack or defend. This was something that Qi-forming sword artists did not have. Of course, manipulating the spirit Qi outside of one's body was not easy. Usually, a sword artist who had just broken through to the Qi high level would not be able to master this ability. They would need to practice for a period of time before they could master this ability. Furthermore, when he had just grasped it, the proportion of spirit energy he could mobilize was very low and limited. Only swordsmen with extraordinary talent could mobilize more spirit energy. At this moment, Chu Mu was in the process of breaking through. Once he was done, he would be a Qi high swordsman. Streaks of grayish-white air currents wrapped around his body like flowing water. They seemed to be trapping Chu Mu, but in reality, they formed layers of protection for Chu Mu. The reason why Chu Mu chose to break through here was because he was confident, extremely confident. Before this, he had already understood the things that he had to pay attention to when breaking through to the Qi high level. Among them, there was a record of condensing Qi into a stream to protect oneself. In order to break through to the Qi high level, one had to first manipulate one's mental energy and abandon all distracting thoughts. Gradually, one would come into contact with the spirit Qi outside of one's body and form a resonance with it. Intentionally or unintentionally, the spirit Qi around one's body would be manipulated. The result of manipulating the spirit Qi was to form streaks of air around one's body. This was the so-called condensing Qi into a stream. It formed a protective barrier and protected one's body. It didn't matter if you were a person with poor talent or a person with extraordinary talent. When breaking through to the Qi high level, you had to go through this step. Chu Mu's air currents were grayish-white. Because this was the Chaoyao Mountains, there was not only spirit Qi, but also Yao Qi. When the two were mixed together, manipulating the spirit Qi would naturally affect the Yao Qi as well. This was not a problem at all. On the contrary, With the addition of the Yao Qi, the power of the condensing Qi into a stream increased. After all, the Yao Qi was a few times more violent than the Spirit Qi. The 13 core disciples of the Moro Sword sect all had gloomy faces. They gritted their teeth, and their eyes were filled with killing intent. They stared at the grayish-white air currents as if they were trying to see through the grayish-white air currents and see Chumu. Unfortunately, they didn't have the ability to see through things. "Senior brother, what do we do now?" A low Qi high warrior looked at the 2 sword Desheng warriors and asked in a deep voice, "Condensing Qi into a stream to protect oneself. Unless it is a sword master, even if all 13 of us attack together, we will not be able to do anything to those air currents." One of the sword Desheng warriors said in a deep voice. He was filled with anger and unwillingness. Indeed, the grayish-white air currents outside of Chumu's body were very powerful. Of course, if it was only one air current, they would still be able to destroy it if they attacked with all their strength. However, the problem was that there was not only one air current or 10 air currents. There were dozens of them. The edges of each grayish-white airflow were like sawtooth waves, or like a slowed-down electric saw. Dozens of them were like dozens of small flood dragons. These grayish-white airflows flowed in opposite directions. In this way, even if there was a tyrannical attack, it would be weakened by the high-speed flow of the grayish-white airflow and eventually be destroyed. The Spirit Qi and Yao Qi in the surroundings were endless. Once the grayish-white air currents were used up, they would immediately be replenished. Therefore, the most effective way to deal with them was to use one attack to tear apart the air currents and attack Chumu. Unfortunately, they did not have the ability to do so. Just like what the sword Desheng warrior said, only a sword master would be able to do so. Of course, if an Origin Realm sword master were to attack, he would be able to easily break through the protection of the grayish-white air currents and kill the person inside. At this moment, the spirit aura that was converging from all directions had become very clear. Streams of spirit aura mixed with demonic aura became grayish-white and charged towards Chumu like conscious noodles. The Spirit Qi became denser and denser. Gradually, the outline of a Spirit Qi whirlpool formed in the air above Chumu. After 10 breaths, under the gaze of the 13 Moro sword sect disciples, the Spirit Qi whirlpool became denser and denser. Because of the Yao Qi, it also showed a faint grayish-white color. As time passed, the Spirit Qi whirlpool continued to expand, and the faint grayish-white color also deepened bit by bit. The wind howled and was extremely cold. Some of the branches of the trees in the Chaoyao Mountains were broken, and many fist-sized rocks were blown into the sky by the wind. The huge storm was raging, and rumbling sounds could be heard. The originally clear sky was now dark and gloomy, as if a storm was coming. It was as if the world was about to be destroyed. The atmosphere was gloomy and oppressive, making it difficult for people to even breathe. They felt as if there was a stone in their chest. We have 2 choices now. First, we can stay and wait for Chumu to finish his breakthrough. By then he will have reached the beginning of the Qi High Realm, and his ability will increase significantly. It will be much more difficult for us to capture him alive, and even killing him will not be easy. One of the Qi High sword Desheng warriors tried to keep his breathing steady and said in a deep voice, "Although it is difficult, it is not impossible. He has just broken through and is not familiar with the power of the Qi High Realm. He will not be able to use the true power of the Qi High Realm. But if we work together, we will be able to fight or even kill a peak Qi High Realm sword master." As soon as he finished speaking, his words were immediately blown away by the storm. As he spoke, he had to use more and more strength, and in the end he was almost shouting, "Second, we can leave right now and go back to the faction to report this matter. By then, the level of the mission will be increased, and the rewards will also be increased. But if we go back and forth, I am afraid that Chumu has already mastered the essence of the Qi High Realm and is able to use the full power of the Qi High Realm. If we accept this mission, we may not be able to take him down. The Qi High Realm Sword Desheng warrior shouted again, "This mission is a joint mission, and I cannot make the decision for you. So, come up with your own decision. The minority obeys the majority." At this moment, the other sword masters were all silent. Their minds were quickly working to analyze the situation and come up with a decision. At this moment, the wind was getting stronger and stronger. The rocks on the ground were rolling quickly, and many trees were uprooted and flew into the sky. It was as if a level 12 typhoon was coming. The 13 Qi High Realm sword masters had to back off because the storm was too strong. Even they felt as if their bodies were being blown into the sky. Only Chu Mu did not move. At this moment, he had already forgotten about everything that was happening around him. He was completely immersed in his own mental world. The spirit Qi and monster Qi in the surroundings mixed together and continuously entered Chu Mu's body. With the 9 rotation cycles of heaven origin, the spirit Qi was constantly being converted into pure sword Qi. The sword Qi collided with the monster Qi again and again. Luckily, Chu Mu's meridians were very strong, and this kind of collision did not cause any burden to Chu Mu's meridians. On the contrary, after repeated collisions, Chu Mu's heavenly yuan sword Qi became even purer. On the mental level, Chu Mu once again entered the state of emptiness. This state was very rare and could only be entered when breaking through to the next realm, just like when a sword master broke through from the half-step Qi transformation realm to the Qi transformation realm. There was a certain chance that a sword master could enter the state of emptiness. Then, when breaking through to the Qi High Realm, there was also a certain chance that a sword master could enter the state of Desheng. The duration of the emptiness state was closely related to the strength of one's soul. The stronger one's soul was, the longer the emptiness state could last. Chu Mu took the opportunity to comprehend the sword force first. His sword force had already reached the peak of Desheng and was faintly becoming more rounded. This was a sign that he was about to break through to perfection. And now, in this state of emptiness, Chu Mu only needed to comprehend a little, and he was able to break through the bottleneck of the sword force and reach perfection. Sword force perfection. Chu Mu immediately felt that the sword force was flowing smoothly and smoothly. It was much easier than before. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qijian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 405. A loud sound echoed throughout the sky. 1,000-meter-long spirit Qi whirlpool appeared above Chu Mu, spinning slowly. This spirit Qi whirlpool was gray and white. It was like a huge millstone spinning, as if it was going to destroy everything. Anyone who looked at it could feel the power of the heavens. It was unstoppable. Rumbling sounds continued to erupt from the huge grayish-white spirit Qi vortex. Rays of light flickered within the spirit Qi vortex. Those were thunderbolts wreaking havoc like flood dragons. That was because the spirit Qi and demonic Qi were too dense, constantly producing electric currents due to the friction and collisions. Countless electric currents gathered to form bolts of lightning and thunder, wreaking havoc in the spirit Qi vortex, full of terrifying power. The enormous and heavy spirit aura whirlpool was like a huge mountain. Under this extremely frightening mountain, Chu Mu's figure was nowhere to be seen. There were only a few dozen dragon-like, grayish-white streams of air that constantly revolved around him, ignoring the violent hurricane. Some trees and rocks were blown away by the strong winds and were smashed into the spirit Qi whirlpools. They were instantly destroyed by the spirit Qi whirlpools and disappeared without a trace. Even if it was 10,000 meters away, it would still be affected. 1,000-meter-long spirit Qi whirlpool. Scary, this person's talent is really scary. Die, he must die. Another Qi High warrior said as he coldly stared at the Ling Qi whirlpool in the sky. His eyes were filled with fear. I have already made up my mind. I will stay here and kill him with everything I have after he breaks through. Although he said that if the others did not stay, he would not have the confidence to kill him alone. So he turned around and looked at the others. Brother is right. This person's talent is too scary. Once he grows up, he will be a disaster. If we can kill him today, we must. A Chi-Hai sword warrior said firmly, I have decided to stay. I have decided to stay too. I think it is better for me to leave. I am not confident. Suddenly, a Chi-Hai sword warrior made a different decision. In the end, the 13 core disciples of the Moro Sword Martial School all made their own decisions. 10 of them decided to stay and take advantage of this opportunity to kill Chu Mu, while the other 3 thought that they were not confident enough to stay. However, they had previously agreed that the minority would obey the majority. Since the 10 of them had decided to stay, the 3 who had decided to leave had to stay as well. They would work together to kill Chu Mu, even if the reward for the mission would be reduced. The madly blowing wind finally weakened little by little, and the color of the huge, millstone-like whirlpool of spiritual energy in the sky was also rapidly fading. This meant that Chu Mu's breakthrough was nearing its end. The 13 core disciples of the Moro sword sect all held their breaths. They were all excited and full of killing intent. A swordsman like Chu Mu could be called a genius, the kind that others envied. Being a genius did not necessarily mean having a high level of training talent. Being able to surpass normal people in a certain aspect could also be called a genius. Like Chu Mu, who was able to trigger a 1,000-meter-wide whirlpool of spiritual energy in just one breakthrough, he was definitely worthy of being called a genius. Not to mention that he was able to kill 9 Chi-Hai realm warriors with his peak level of Chi-shaping realm sword Chi, and also had Desheng's peak level sword Chi. If he was not a genius, then what was he? Not to mention that according to the information they had, this Chu Mu was not even 20 years old. As long as a person like him did not die, once he grew up, there was a high chance that he would be able to become a sword hero. In the future, he would definitely be able to reach the origin realm. If this person was a disciple of the Moro sword sect, not only would they not attack him, they would even protect him. Unfortunately, this person was not a disciple of the Moro sword sect. Since he was not a disciple of the Moro sword sect and was being hunted down by the Moro sword sect's core disciple mission, he would definitely hate the Moro sword sect. It was not a good thing to be hated by such a person. Therefore, the only way to do it was to kill him before he truly matured to prevent future troubles. All 13 of them were filled with killing intent. Each of them held onto the hilt of their swords. Their eyes were shining brightly, filled with killing intent. They were waiting for everything to calm down before they made their move to kill Chu Mu. The huge spiritual energy whirlpool in the sky had turned into a light gray color. Its spinning speed was getting slower and slower, and it was becoming unstable. It was as if it would disappear with a single blow of wind. The storm that was raging around Chu Mu had also turned into a strong wind. The dozens of gray chi streams that were surrounding Chu Mu had also started to fade away. All of this meant that Chu Mu's breakthrough was about to end. He was about to lose the protection of the condensed chi stream, protect self. When the time came, he would be exposed in front of 13 wolves, like a weak little lamb. However, it was hard to say who was the weak little lamb and who was the wolf. Let's get close first. Get ready and wait for my command. One of the Chi-Hai swordsmen said in a low voice. Then the 13 Chi-Hai swordsmen started to move forward. Every one of them walked very softly, as if they were afraid that Chu Mu would hear them. They all held their breaths and stared at the gray chi streams that were slowly disappearing. Behind the chi streams, a human figure could be seen. Move! A deep voice suddenly exploded. It was like thunder. One could hear the killing intent and excitement in the voice. It was the kind of excitement that would make one's hair stand on end. 13 sounds of swords being pulled out echoed in the air. 13 cold sword light were like ripples in the autumn water. releasing a strong killing intent. The 13 swords all swung forward. Their sword chi and mental state were all infused into the swords, causing the swords to emit different colored lights. Then the surrounding chi started to move. It was like an invisible hand was grabbing at the swords, forcefully gathering the chi on each of the swords, causing each of the swords to emit a bright light. The 13 sword lights once again sliced through the air. They were dozens of meters away from each other, and their power was even stronger than before. The sharp sound of the swords tearing through the air was ear-piercing. Wherever the 13 different colored sword lights went, the ground would be cut open. It was dozens of meters long, and the rocks were as fragile as tofu. The gray chi streams that were about to disappear played their last role. They blocked the 13 sword lights for a bit and then disappeared in the blink of an eye, like smoke being blown away by a strong wind. The dozens of grayish-white air streams were all shattered, turning into grayish-white smoke that spread out in all directions. The 13 terrifying sword lights disappeared into the grayish-white smoke. The 13 chi-high swordsmen all opened their eyes wide and stared at the scene with full concentration. Normally, a chi-high swordsman who had just broken through to the chi-high realm would be severely injured, even if he didn't die. In the next moment, a series of explosions were heard and turned into a terrifying circular shockwave. It was like a rolling wave, and it immediately dispersed the gray smoke. A strong wind blew towards them, causing the sand and rocks to fly. The 13 chi-high swordsmen couldn't help but cover their faces with their hands. Through the gaps between their fingers, they saw a figure standing straight between the sky and the ground. It was like a great sword pointing towards the sky, piercing through the clouds. The sharpness of the sword was unparalleled. "He is not dead." A scream, filled with shock, was heard in the forest. It almost made some of the beasts that were giving birth to their offspring weak on the spot. "Kill him at all costs." A shout filled with anger and fear was heard. Immediately after, the 13 chi-high swordsmen attacked again. The 13 ancient sword arts were not held back at all. The wind was howling, the thunder was rumbling, the rocks were cracking, the waves were surging, and the fire was burning the sky. Within a 100-meter radius, everything was covered by the 13 ancient sword arts. Wherever the ancient sword arts went, the ground cracked, the rocks shattered, and the land was scorched. In order to kill Chu Mu, the 13 core disciples of the Mo Luo sword sect were giving it their all. They did not hold back at all. The power of their combined attacks was enough to kill even a chi-high swordsman. The strong killing intent was enough to freeze people's blood. As the target, Chu Mu was the first to bear the brunt of the killing intent. All of a sudden, Chu Mu's body shook as if he was standing still in the same spot, receiving the attacks of the 13 chi-high swordsmen. However, Chu Mu's real body had already rushed towards the 13 chi-high swordsmen. His expression was calm, but his eyes were full of fighting intent. His pupils reflected the 13 ancient sword arts. The trajectory of the ancient sword arts was clearly shown in Chu Mu's eyes. The mysteries of the ancient sword arts were also revealed. The speed sky sword was drawn out of its scabbard like lightning. In a second, the speed sky sword turned into 13 stars and flew out like shooting stars. Its speed was as fast as lightning and as fast as light. This sword attack was formed by the Sky Yuan sword chi, the ripping mentality, and 1% of the perfect sword force. It followed the trajectory of the 13 ancient sword arts and avoided colliding with their swords. It went straight towards the throats of the 13 chi-high swordsmen. The 13 chi-high swordsmen were shocked. Their scalps went numb, and they quickly changed their sword attacks to counter the attack. Chi, 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 3 light sounds were heard. It made the 2 chi-high swordsmen to shang and the 8 low chi-high swordsmen shiver. That sound was the sound of a sword piercing into a person's flesh. The 13 stars disappeared. Chu Mu's body was like the wind, but also as light as a swan. He also brought with him the unpredictable changes of the white clouds in the sky, making it impossible for the swordsman to catch him. The speed sky sword appeared and disappeared like a ghost. 10 more stars appeared in front of the 10-chi-high swordsman again. The stars suddenly exploded and turned into hundreds and thousands of stars. At that moment, the swordsmen were in the middle of the Milky Way. Their eyes reflected the countless stars. In their eyes, the stars were everywhere. Every star was shining brightly, and every star was sharp like the tip of a sword. In front of the 10-chi-high swordsman, Chu Mu's body disappeared. Only the stars were spinning and moving. In the blink of an eye, Chu Mu's body passed through the 10-chi-high swordsman. He stopped 20 meters away. The speed sky sword was pointed towards the ground. On the tip of the sword, there was a drop of blood slowly dripping down. The 10-chi-high swordsmen had their backs facing Chu Mu. They all maintained the posture of charging forward and performing their sword attacks. It was as if they had turned into 10 statues. They did not move at all. After 3 breaths, the 10-chi-high swordsmen's bodies shook and they slowly fell forward. Bang! It was as if the sound resonated between heaven and earth. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chijian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 406. 13 corpses were lying on the ground, their blood staining the ground red. The smell of blood spread out and was blown away by the wind. Chu Mu stopped looking at the 13 corpses and stretched out his right hand. He opened his palm and bent his fingers, as if he was grabbing onto something. A slight sound of wind was heard, and wisps of ling chi quickly gathered from the surroundings like snakes gathering in his palm. In the blink of an eye, a ling chi whirlpool appeared in his palm. It kept spinning and was gray in color. It was a smaller version of the ling chi whirlpool from before. Chi si in the palm. This was the symbol of a real chi-high sword artist. Just like the one-eyed dragon from before, although he was a chi-high sword artist, he had just broken through to the chi-high sword artist and did not have the ability to command the ling chi of heaven and earth. Therefore, the one-eyed dragon could not be considered a true chi-high realm swordsman. Only after a period of seclusion could he be considered a true chi-high realm swordsman. Unfortunately, he was too impulsive and died under Chu Mu's sword. The chi si in the palm did not have any power. It was only a symbol of a real chi-high sword artist. At the same time, it showed the level of control a chi-high sword artist had over the ling chi of heaven and earth. Chu Mu's eyes were focused on the spirit aura whirlpool in his right palm. He was completely focused on the spirit aura whirlpool. His pupils reflected the spirit aura whirlpool. Strands of spirit aura mixed with demonic aura continuously flew in from all directions. It was like 100 rivers flowing into the sea, causing the small spirit aura whirlpool to expand little by little. I only need ling chi. Chu Mu said to himself. The gray ling chi whirlpool suddenly released wisps of gray chi. It was the violent yao chi. A chi-high sword artist could command the ling chi of heaven and earth, but could not command the yao chi. The demonic aura was violent and destructive. Although it was mixed with spiritual energy in the air, it was clearly separated. In a place like the disorderly Goblin Mountains, the amount of yao chi was almost equal to the amount of ling chi. Thus, when a chi-high swordsman manipulated the ling chi of heaven and earth, it was inevitable that the yao chi would converge. This yao chi was not under their control. Therefore, swordsmen had to exclude demon chi. Otherwise, their control of spirit chi would become difficult due to the existence of demon chi. They would not be able to do it perfectly, and if they were not careful, it would cause a violent conflict between spirit chi and demon chi, causing harm to themselves. Think about it. Originally, he wanted to use the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to assist his attack or defense. If he ended up hurting himself because of the conflict between the demonic chi, that would be really unlucky. Even though Chu Mu was extraordinarily talented, he could not go against this rule. Therefore, he expelled the demonic aura from his sea of qi in his palm. Instantly, the grayish-white color turned white. If it was a swordsman who had just broken through to the qi-high realm, they would not be able to do this. They would need to try for days, or even months before they could do it. However, Chu Mu's soul was extremely strong, and his control was unparalleled. He could easily do it by concentrating his mind. The white spirit qi whirlpool covered the entire palm. It spun at a speed visible to the naked eye, making a whistling sound as if a strong wind was blowing. In the center of the white spirit qi whirlpool, the color was the darkest. It was a milky white color. Looking closely, the milky white color took up 30% of the entire white spirit qi whirlpool. 30%. Chu Mu frowned slightly, as if he was not satisfied with this ratio. Soon after, his expression returned to normal. 30% was actually not bad. When a swordsman with average talent broke through to the qi-high realm, they would need to spend 3 months to half a year in seclusion to be able to control the spirit qi of heaven and earth and condense the sea of qi in their palm. At this point, a swordsman at the qi-high realm would have the ability to control the spirit qi of heaven and earth. But there was a limit to how much spirit qi could be controlled. In other words, with one's body as the center, 10% of all the Ling Qi within a 1-kilometer radius would be able to increase a Qi high-level sword artist attack or defense by 10%. After breaking through to the low Qi high realm, the radius of the spirit Qi increased from 1,000 meters to 2,000 meters. That 10% could also increase a swordsman's attack or defense by 10%. Similarly, after breaking through to the Qi high realm, Deshang could control the spirit qi within a radius of 3,000 meters. After breaking through to the peak of the qi high realm, he could control the spirit qi within a radius of 4,000 meters. Some talented swordsmen could even control the spirit qi within a radius of 5,000 meters when they reached the peak of the qi high realm. Do not underestimate this 10%. The difference between a peak of the qi high realm and a beginning of the qi high realm was like heaven and earth. Above that would be 20%. A swordsman who could control 20% of the spirit qi after forming the qi sea in their palms would be extremely talented. Above that, there were even more talented swordsmen who could control 30% of the spirit qi of heaven and earth. There were very few swordsmen who could control 30% of the spirit qi of heaven and earth. Chu Mu was able to control 30% of the spirit aura within a 1,000-meter radius for his own use. This meant that his attack or defense could be increased by 30% from the original foundation. 30%, this was a terrifying ratio. It was enough to defeat any swordsman of the same level. Also, it was not impossible for a qi-high swordsman to control the spirit qi of heaven and earth. Under some special circumstances, it was possible to increase the spirit qi by 10% or even 20%. By then, the swordsman would be even more powerful. But these circumstances were too rare. Most of the qi-high swordsmen could only control 10% of the spirit qi of heaven and earth when they reached the peak of the qi-high realm. Before, when Chu Mu killed the 13 core disciples of the Mo Luo sword sect, he did not use any of the spirit qi of heaven and earth. He only used his own Sky Yuan sword qi, the more powerful lacerating mentality, and 1% of his perfect sword form. During the process of breaking through to the qi high realm, Chu Mu entered the ethereal state. Deshang's perfect sword form also broke through to the perfect sword form. This did not take much time. After that, Chu Mu focused on understanding the lacerating mentality. He increased the lacerating mentality from 50% to 60% before he finished the ethereal state. After the perfect sword form, not only was it twice as powerful as Deshang's perfect sword form, it was also much more flexible. Once it was used, it would be able to shake the heavens and earth. In terms of energy consumption, It was actually less than Desheng's perfect sword form. It was like some of the unnecessary edges had been smoothed out. The sharpness of the sword had also changed from being exposed to the outside to being restrained. The power had become more condensed, and it could even flow around the sword like sword chi, reducing the energy consumption. Chu Mu finally understood why the sword hero rank swordsmen could use 1% of their sword force without restraint. It was because their sword force had reached perfection. No wonder one of the requirements to become a sword hero was to reach perfection in sword force. 60% of the lacerating mentality was still at the minor completion level, but its power was equivalent to 90% of Desheng's perfect sword form. With every 10% increase in the mentality, the power would increase by a lot. 60% ripping concept and 1% perfect sword force. Adding on the fact that the quality and quantity of his sword aura was much higher than that of a normal low chi high realm sword artist. Chu Mu's every sword attack was extremely terrifying. It was comparable to a perfect chi high realm sword artist. It was not something that a low chi high realm sword artist or high chi high realm sword artist could defend against. Among them, the flying swan illusory steps also played a huge role. With the combination of the two, Yi Qin had killed all 13 core disciples of the Mo Luo sword sect with a speed sky sword. Yi Qin took out all the space armlets from the 13 corpses with ease. There were 10 low-rank space armlets in total, and each of them contained soul stones, pellets, spirit medicines, ores, metals, and so on. Chu Mu even found 3 Earth rank ancient sword arts among them. However, these 3 Earth rank ancient sword arts were much weaker than the Broken Star sword art. Just the Broken Star sword art alone would have taken Chu Mu a lot of time to train, so Chu Mu just put away the 3 Earth rank ancient sword arts. After organizing a little bit, Yi Qin found 35 low rank black iron soulstone cards, 12 low rank bronze soulstone cards, 23,500 low rank soulstones, and 1,120 mid rank soulstones. In addition, there were also 10 extreme rank swords and 3 upper rank swords. Their value was also extraordinary, and Chu Mu had gained a lot from them. Chu Mu did not care about the 13 corpses. He knew that after he left this place, these 13 corpses would become some demonic beast's food. His body flashed as he used the flying swan illusory steps. Chu Mu's body seemed to have stopped at the same place, but in reality he had already appeared dozens of meters away. He left with a light and fast speed. Putting the speed sky sword back into its scabbard, the mid-rank high rank demonic beast in front of him fell down unwillingly. Its demonic core had also become Chu Mu's spoils of war. This demonic beast was killed by Chu Mu in front of its cave. After killing it, Chu Mu threw the corpse far away. He then moved a huge rock that weighed a few thousand pounds and placed it at the entrance of the cave. He then walked into the cave and blocked the entrance with the huge rock. The light inside the cave immediately dimmed. Luckily, this demonic beast liked to be clean, and the inside of the cave was rather dry, which did not make Chu Mu feel disgusted. A strand of sword chi came out of his finger and swept across the cave, clearing out an empty space that was as clean as a mirror. Chu Mu sat down with his legs crossed. He first closed his eyes and adjusted his sky, origin, sword chi for a while. Then he opened his eyes, which were shining brightly. With a move of his hand, a jade box appeared in his palm. He opened the jade box, and a yellow-colored fruit was quietly lying inside. The surface of the fruit was filled with cracks, as if it was a round rock that had not been broken by a hammer. The sky desolate fruit. Originally, Chu Mu's plan was to eat the sky desolate fruit when he was at the peak of the Qi transformation realm. On one hand, it would increase his cultivation talent to the 6th rank, and on the other hand, it would allow his sword Qi to break through to the Qi high realm. But later on, the plan changed. He needed to train the 9 transformations of Sky Yuan to the 9th transformation first. Once he reached the 9th transformation, he would naturally have the opportunity to break through and would not need the sky desolate fruit. But now that he had broken through to the Chi-High realm, his cultivation talent had an obvious effect on his cultivation speed. Adding on the pressure from the sky slaughter sword, Chu-Mu decided to eat the sky desolate fruit. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 407. A black shadow appeared from afar. In the blink of an eye, it arrived with the wind and stopped at the place where Chu-Mu broke through to the Chi-High realm. Roar! The demonic beast that was about to eat a corpse was frightened. It raised its head and looked at the man in the black robe. It let out a threatening roar. Its 4 limbs grabbed the ground tightly, and its body arched backwards like a compressed spring. It was about to launch a fatal attack. A deep nasal sound came out from the man's nose. He raised his left hand and put his index finger and middle finger together. Sword chi was released from his fingers, and a sharp sword light was released. With a slight shake, a bright light golden sword light shot out from his fingers. At the same time, the mid-level demon beast's 4 limbs suddenly bounced and the ground cracked. A strong sound of breaking the air resounded, and it turned into an arrow that shot towards the black-robed man. The sharp claws that it stretched forward left a few dazzling scratches in the air, as if it was tearing the space apart. Puchi! The golden sword light hit the head of the demonic beast and instantly pierced through it. The body of the demonic beast trembled in midair and changed its direction slightly. It rushed past the side of the black-robed man and brought up a strong gust of wind. The black-robed man's long hair and clothes fluttered. With a bang, the demonic beast charged for another 10 meters before heavily crashing into a huge rock. The huge rock shattered into pieces, and the demonic beast head was like a watermelon that had been smashed by a hammer. Red and white blood splattered everywhere. Without using his sword, he killed a middle-level demonic beast with just a finger. This kind of power was not something that even a Deshang, sword warrior of the Chi-High realm, could do. The man's long black hair was loose behind his head. His eyebrows were long and sharp like a sword. His eyes were narrowed and sharp like a sword. The air around him was filled with coldness. Looking at the man's face, he was about 30 years old. The expression on his face was a bit stiff. His eyes were sunken and his nose was like an eagle's. This made him look a bit gloomy. It was obvious that he was not someone easy to get along with. He was wearing a long black robe and had a long sword on his back. He was dressed exactly the same as the 13 corpses on the ground. Even the symbol on his sleeve was the same. This meant that he was from the same background as the 13 corpses, a core disciple of the Moro sword sect. This person's chi was much stronger than the 13 Chi-High warriors from the Mo Luo sword sect. It was obvious that his sword chi was much stronger than Deshang, who was at the Chi-High realm. He was a peak Chi-High warrior, and not just any peak Chi-High warrior. He took a step forward and appeared more than 10 meters away with a whoosh. He stopped beside a corpse and flipped the corpse over with a light kick. He narrowed his eyes and stared at the wound on the corpse's throat. Without saying a word, other than the corpse that had been gnawed out of shape by the demonic beast, the wounds of the other 12 corpses had all been examined. Their wounds are all the same, and they were all killed by the same person. His attacks were decisive and ruthless, and his swordsmanship was extraordinary. He had mastered the essence of swordsmanship. The time of death of these junior brothers was almost the same, which means that they didn't fight back much. This person, the black-robed man, retracted his gaze and looked into the distance. His narrowed eyes shone like the sun. He's a strong opponent. As he spoke, he didn't leave immediately. Instead, he looked around carefully. Suddenly, he frowned because he had encountered something that he couldn't understand. He was also a core disciple of the Moro sword sect. He had the sword chi of the peak Chi-High realm, and his strength was much stronger than normal peak Chi-High warriors. This time, he came to the Chaoyao Mountains to train his swordsmanship. He hoped that he could improve in battles with demonic beasts and find a chance to break through. When one of the Moro sword sect disciples released the signal flare, he had seen it. But at that time, he was far away and fighting with a super-level demonic beast, so he couldn't get away. It took him a while to kill the mid-level super-rank monster beast. After thinking for a while, he quickly rushed to the place where the signal flare rose into the sky. When he was still halfway there, he felt the changes in the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. They were all converging towards a certain place, and a huge vortex of spiritual chi appeared in his eyes. This was obviously the sign of someone breaking through to the chi-high realm, and it was a talented sword warrior. He sped up, but before he arrived, the breakthrough had already ended. When he arrived, he couldn't find the person who had broken through. Instead, he saw 13 corpses from the same Moro sword sect as him. Could it be that the sword warrior who had just broken through to the chi-high realm killed them? The black-cloaked man frowned and thought to himself, no, even if it was the current sword hero when he had just broken through to the chi-high realm, he wouldn't be able to kill 2 chi-high warriors, 8 low-level chi-high warriors, and 3 entry-level chi-high warriors in just 10 breaths of time. If it wasn't him, then who killed all 13 of them? And who broke through to the chi-high realm here? 2 questions circled around in his mind, and a third question popped up. Is the sword warrior who killed the 13 of them in the same group as the sword warrior who broke through to the chi-high realm here? Without an answer, he could only search for the answer himself. After carefully searching the area, he used his movement skill and quickly flew away. The direction he was heading towards was the direction that Chumu had gone. In the pitch-black cave of the demon beast, Chumu sat with his legs crossed. His body was motionless as if he had turned into a statue. Even his breathing had become so slow that it was almost inaudible. The Tianyuan sword chi was moving in his meridians at lightning speed. After one full cycle after another, there were rumbling sounds coming from his meridians, as if thunder was rumbling nonstop. The power of the Tianhuang fruit kept moving in his body. His organs, blood, bones, meridians, muscles, etc. were all hit by the power of the Tianhuang fruit and slowly seeped into his body. A small Tianhuang fruit contained a vast amount of energy. This energy kept moving in and out of Chu Mu's body, slowly merging into Chu Mu's body. Chu Mu could only feel the power of the Tianhuang fruit continuously merging into his body, but he did not know where it went. He only had a strange feeling, as if which part of his body was improving was the most important part. During this time, the Tianyuan sword chi was moving faster and faster. It was so fast that Chu Mu could barely keep up with it, but his meridians were still able to bear it and did not show any signs of overloading. A large amount of spiritual chi came from all directions. Even the 1,000-pound boulder could not keep it out. The spiritual chi kept flowing in through the cracks of the boulder, creating a sharp whistling sound. The spiritual chi that was flowing into the demon beast cave became visible to the naked eye. It was like 100 rivers flowing into the sea, rushing towards Chu Mu. It directly entered Chu Mu's body and was quickly converted into the Tianyuan sword chi. The minimum requirement for a chi-high sword artist to train was the upper rank profound level sword chi arts. The 9 transformations of heaven was the top of the profound level sword chi arts. Even though Chu Mu had already reached the 9th transformations, he could still continue to train until he reached the peak of the 9th transformations. The continuous spiritual chi was like an endless river. Once it entered Chu Mu's body, it was instantly converted into pure Tianyuan sword chi, causing the amount of Tianyuan sword chi to increase. 2 things at the same time. The power of the Tianhuang fruit came wave after wave. Chu Mu had an indescribable feeling. It was as if his whole body was about to float. It was an indescribable feeling. This was a true rebirth. With a loud bang, the 1,000-pound boulder at the entrance of the cave suddenly exploded. Broken rocks flew in all directions at high speed. Dust filled the air. A black figure appeared at the entrance of the cave. With a flash, it turned into a black light and entered the cave. The man in the black robe glanced around. The darkness in the cave could not affect his eyes at all. His eyes immediately fell on Chumu's body. His pupils seemed to have turned into golden gems, shooting out sharp sword light. Die. Without any reason or need for any reason, the man in the black robe reached out his left hand and pointed his finger like a sword. A bright golden light suddenly appeared at the tip of his finger. That bright light continued to condense and became more and more intense. As his finger trembled, a bright golden sword light pierced through the air and shot towards the center of Chumu's eyebrows. The power of this sword light was at least 3 times more powerful than the mid-level demon beast that he had killed before. He wanted to kill Chumu with one strike. With a poochie sound, the golden sword light pierced through Chumu's forehead and shot behind him, hitting the cave wall. The hard cave wall was as fragile as tofu. The golden sword light sank deep into it and disappeared, leaving behind a bottomless, finger-sized hole. The surroundings were not damaged at all. It was enough to show that the golden sword light had condensed to an astonishing degree. The man in the black robe did not show any joy after killing his target. He pulled out his long sword, and the golden sword light immediately flashed in the dark cave. He waved his hand forward, and a clanging sound was heard. Faint golden sparks splashed out. His wrist trembled slightly. Under the golden sword, a golden butterfly appeared. It seemed to be about to fly away. It was beautiful and contained an astonishing sharpness. In the dark, Chumu attacked again. Within a breath, he had stabbed out 18 times. Each sword stabbed at a different part of the golden butterfly. When the last sword stabbed, the golden butterfly shook and exploded into golden particles. The sword did not stop. It flew forward like a meteor chasing after the moon, stabbing towards the man in the black robe's throat. The man in the black robe did not dodge. He slashed his sword out diagonally, leaving a straight and bright mark in the air. It was as if he had cut a hole in space, accurately blocking Chumu's attack. The 2 swords could not avoid colliding again. A powerful force surged. Faint golden sparks splashed out in all directions. The 2 forces attacked Chumu and the man in the black robe, respectively. Chumu's body lightly flew backwards, while the black-robed man took 3 steps back. The long sword's edge was oppressively pointed straight at Chumu. At the tip of the sword, a 3-inch golden sword light was emitted. The sword's body was steady, as if even a 1,000-kilogram boulder wouldn't be able to make the sword sway. The man in the black robe's eyes suddenly lit up. It was as if a high-powered light bulb had suddenly been turned on. His stiff expression also revealed a hint of bloodthirsty excitement. All the doubts in his heart had been answered. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation.